Hello there. You're listening to Science Blanket, your quiet space for wonder. I'm so glad you've joined me tonight. Tonight, we are wrapping ourselves in the story of dreams and the sleepy brain. It's easy to think of sleep as a simple pause, a quiet off switch for the day. But beneath the surface, your mind is a silent architect, weaving together a tapestry of memories, emotions, and light. It is a time when the logic of the world fades, and the hidden currents of your mind begin to flow. As we begin, imagine a soft, shimmering mist of thoughts settling over you. You don't need to analyze the chemistry of your rest or the logic of your dreams. You don't need to remember the phases of sleep or the firing of neurons. Just let the science tuck you in, like a gentle tide pulling slowly back from the shore. If this blanket of knowledge helps you find rest, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps us keep the lights low and the stories flowing for every sleepy mind in our community. Now, take a deep breath. Feel the pillows support the weight of your head. Release the tension in your brow. Let your shoulders sink into the mattress and allow your thoughts to become as soft as a cloud. Give yourself permission to let go. Let's explore the world of dreams together. As night begins and darkness settles around us, something remarkable happens within the human brain. Rather than simply switching off like a light, the brain undergoes a gradual and elegant transformation, shifting from its daytime patterns into something entirely different yet equally complex. This transition is not an ending but a beginning, a journey into altered states of consciousness that will occupy the next several hours of our existence. The brain does not shut down at all. Instead, it slowly changes how it processes the world around us, recalibrating its relationship with reality, filtering incoming information differently, and prioritizing internal processes over external awareness. Throughout the day, our brains are oriented outward, constantly scanning the environment for important information, responding to stimuli, making decisions, engaging with other people and with tasks that demand our attention. But as evening arrives and we prepare for sleep, this outward focus gradually softens and turns inward. The brain begins to disengage from the external world, not abruptly but in stages, like a ship slowly pulling away from the dock and setting out into deeper waters. The process of falling asleep is far more intricate than most of us realize as we lie in bed each evening. It involves profound shifts in brain waves, those rhythmic electrical patterns that scientists can measure and record using electroencephalography. These waves change their frequency and amplitude, slowing down from the rapid beta waves of alert wakefulness into the gentler alpha rhythms of relaxation, and then deeper still into theta waves as sleep approaches. Each type of brain wave corresponds to a different state of consciousness, a different way that neurons across the brain are coordinating their activity. Neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that allow brain cells to communicate with one another, also shift their balance during this transition. Some become more abundant while others recede, creating a neurochemical environment conducive to sleep. Serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, and many other chemicals all play roles in regulating our sleep-wake cycle, and their levels rise and fall according to complex rhythms influenced by internal clocks, light exposure, and countless other factors. There is also something called sensory gating, a process by which the brain gradually closes the doors to external stimuli, becoming less responsive to sounds, lights, and other sensations that would normally capture our attention. The thalamus, often described as the brain's relay station, begins to filter information more aggressively, preventing sensory signals from reaching the cortex where they would normally be processed and brought into conscious awareness. All of these changes work together in a coordinated symphony, guiding us from wakefulness into sleep, from a state of environmental engagement to one of internal focus and restoration. Many people experience a curious phenomenon as they drift toward unconsciousness, a sudden jolt or twitch that feels like falling, sometimes accompanied by a vivid sensation of stumbling or dropping through space. These are known as hypnic jerks, and they are completely normal, marking the transition point where the brain crosses the threshold between waking and sleeping. Scientists believe these involuntary movements may occur when the motor control systems of the brain are briefly caught between two states, when the neural networks responsible for voluntary movement are releasing their hold but the systems that produce sleep paralysis have not yet fully engaged. The sensation of falling might arise from the brain's attempts to make sense of conflicting signals from the body's balance and position sensors. As muscle tone decreases during the transition to sleep, the brain might interpret this relaxation as a signal that the body is actually falling, triggering a reflexive jerk to catch ourselves. For some people, hypnic jerks happen rarely. For others, they occur almost every night. They can be startling, sometimes even waking us back up momentarily, but they are harmless manifestations of the brain's complex transition into sleep. Some researchers have noted that hypnic jerks seem to occur more frequently when people are sleep-deprived or stressed, perhaps because the transition into sleep happens more abruptly under these conditions, creating a more jarring shift between states. The phenomenon reminds us that sleep is not a simple on-off switch but rather a gradual transition involving many different neural systems that must coordinate their changes in activity. Once we move past this initial transition, we enter the first stage of what is called non-REM sleep, which stands for non-rapid eye movement sleep. This phase is dominated by slow waves, large rolling patterns of electrical activity that sweep across the brain's cortex like gentle ocean swells. These slow waves reflect something fascinating happening at the cellular level, something researchers call alternating cortical up and down states. During UP states, large groups of neurons fire together in coordinated bursts of activity. During down states, these same neurons fall silent almost simultaneously. This alternation happens over and over, creating the slow wave patterns that characterize deep sleep. The synchronization is remarkable. Millions of brain cells acting in concert, pulsing together in a rhythm that would be impossible during wakefulness when neural activity is far more chaotic and individualized. These slow waves serve important functions, helping to consolidate memories, clear metabolic waste from brain tissue, and restore the brain for the next day's demands. The slow waves also seem to play a role in regulating synaptic strength, the connections between neurons that form the physical basis of learning and memory. During waking hours, these connections are strengthened through experience and learning, but if this process continued unchecked, synapses would eventually become saturated, making it difficult to form new memories. The slow waves of deep sleep may help to downscale synaptic connections in a balanced way, preserving important information while making room for new learning the following day. This elegant process of synaptic homeostasis helps explain why sleep is so crucial for cognitive function and why even a single night of poor sleep can impair our ability to think clearly and remember information. It is tempting to imagine that during sleep, certain parts of the brain simply turn off, going dark like buildings at night when everyone has gone home. But this is not what happens. No region of the brain fully turns off during sleep. Instead, activity redistributes, flowing away from some areas and toward others, changing in pattern and purpose but never ceasing entirely. The sensory cortices, which process sights and sounds, become less responsive to external stimuli but do not go silent. They continue to generate activity, though much of it is now internally driven rather than coming from the eyes and ears. The prefrontal cortex, involved in decision-making, self-awareness, and logical thinking, reduces its activity during certain sleep stages, which may be why we accept the bizarre logic of dreams without question. When we dream that we can fly or that we are simultaneously in two different places, we do not stop to question these impossibilities because the critical, analytical functions of the prefrontal cortex are not fully engaged. Meanwhile, deeper structures like the hippocampus, involved in memory formation and spatial navigation, may actually become more active during sleep, replaying the day's experiences and integrating them into long-term storage. Studies have shown that patterns of neural activity recorded while a rat navigates a maze are replayed at high speed in the hippocampus during subsequent sleep, as if the brain is reviewing and consolidating what was learned. The brain remains a dynamic, living organ throughout the night, its billions of neurons continuing their endless dance of electrical and chemical signaling. Blood continues to flow, oxygen continues to be consumed, and energy continues to be expended, though the overall metabolic rate decreases somewhat compared to waking levels. The sleeping brain is not a passive, dormant organ but an active system engaged in crucial maintenance and processing work. For many years, people believed that dreaming occurred exclusively during REM sleep, that distinctive phase characterized by rapid eye movements and vivid, story-like dreams. But research has revealed something surprising. Dreaming can occur even in non-REM sleep, during those deep slow-wave stages that seem so different from the activated brain state of REM. These non-REM dreams are different in character, though. They tend to be shorter, less elaborate, more thought-like the narrative, and less charged with emotion. Instead of the vivid, bizarre adventures we might experience during REM sleep, non-REM dreams often feel more like quiet contemplation, like fragments of thought drifting through consciousness. Someone awakened from non-REM sleep might report thinking about work, or rehearsing a conversation, or simply experiencing vague impressions without clear storylines or dramatic emotional content. The dreams might involve everyday scenes and familiar settings rather than the fantastical scenarios more common in REM sleep. They might feel more like memories or daydreams than true dreams. This distinction suggests that different sleep stages support different types of mental activity, each with its own purpose and character. The thought-like quality of non-REM dreams might reflect ongoing processing of recent experiences, a kind of background mental housekeeping that continues even in deep sleep. The prevalence of dreaming during non-REM sleep has surprised many researchers. Studies using sophisticated brain imaging and careful awakening protocols have found that up to 71% of non-REM sleep contains dream activity detectable through brain signals. This is far higher than once believed. The implication is profound. Our brains are generating conscious experiences throughout nearly all of sleep, not just during those special REM periods. The content and quality of these experiences varies depending on sleep stage and other factors, but the mental activity never truly stops. We are dreaming far more than we realize, far more than we remember. Most of these non-REM dreams simply evaporate upon awakening, leaving no trace in memory, but they were there nonetheless, filling the night with a continuous stream of mental activity. The fact that we spend so much of sleep engaged in some form of conscious experience raises interesting questions about the nature of consciousness itself. If we are experiencing something during non-REM sleep but have no memory of it afterward, was the experience real? Does consciousness require memory to be meaningful? These philosophical questions aside, the high prevalence of non-REM dreaming suggests that the generation of internal experiences is a fundamental feature of brain function, something that continues across different states of consciousness rather than being confined to special circumstances. Perhaps the brain is, in some sense, always telling itself stories, always generating a stream of experience, with the content and coherence of that stream varying depending on the current state of neural activity. As the night progresses and we move through these cycles of non-REM sleep, something new begins to emerge. About 90 minutes after sleep onset, the brain enters its first episode of REM sleep, that peculiar state that so closely resembles wakefulness in some ways while being profoundly different in others. This first REM period is usually brief, just a few minutes long, but it marks an important shift in the night's architecture. The brain will not stay in REM sleep continuously but will cycle back into non-REM stages, then return to REM again later. This cycling continues throughout the night, following a roughly predictable pattern that researchers have mapped in sleep laboratories around the world by monitoring countless sleeping subjects with electrodes attached to their scalps and faces. The discovery of these sleep cycles in the 1950s revolutionized our understanding of sleep, revealing that it is not a uniform state but rather a dynamic process involving regular transitions between different types of neural activity. The approximately 90-minute cycle length appears to be built into the architecture of our brains, governed by complex interactions between different brain regions and neurochemical systems. This rhythm is sometimes called the ultradian rhythm, distinguishing it from the longer circadian rhythm that governs our overall sleep-wake cycle across 24 hours. The REM episodes recur every 90 to 120 minutes throughout the night, creating a rhythm that repeats 4 or 5 times or more depending on how long a person sleeps. What makes this pattern especially interesting is that these REM periods are not all the same length. As the night goes on, particularly in the hours before dawn, REM episodes lengthen and intensify. The first REM period might last only 5 or 10 minutes. By the final cycle in early morning, REM sleep might persist for 30 minutes or even longer. This is why dreams are often most vivid and memorable right before we wake up. We are spending more time in that dream-rich REM state, and we are closer to waking consciousness, which makes it easier for these dreams to be encoded into memory before they fade away. The timing and duration of REM sleep is influenced by many factors including age, sleep deprivation, alcohol consumption, and various medications, but the basic pattern remains remarkably consistent across individuals and cultures. Infants spend far more time in REM sleep than adults, sometimes 50% or more of their total sleep time, while elderly adults tend to have shorter and less frequent REM periods. The reasons for these age-related changes are not entirely clear, but they may relate to the role of REM sleep in brain development and plasticity. Young brains, still forming connections and learning about the world at a tremendous rate, may require more time in this activated sleep state to support their rapid growth. During REM sleep, something almost paradoxical occurs within the brain and body. Brain activity during this phase closely resembles wakefulness despite complete muscle paralysis that prevents us from acting out our dreams. If you were to look at an EEG recording of someone's brain waves during REM sleep alongside a recording of their waking brain, you would see remarkable similarities. The fast, desynchronized patterns of electrical activity, the metabolic rate of glucose consumption in the brain, the blood flow to various regions, all of these markers suggest a highly active, engaged brain. And yet the person is deeply asleep, unconscious of their surroundings, lost in an internally generated world of dreams. The eyes move rapidly beneath closed lids, darting back and forth as if watching the dream's events unfold. Heart rate and breathing become irregular, fluctuating in response to dream content. Brain temperature increases slightly. All signs point to an activated nervous system, yet the person remains asleep and unresponsive to the external environment in most cases. At the same time, nearly all voluntary muscles in the body are paralyzed through active inhibition from the brainstem. Specific neurons in the pons, a region at the base of the brain, release signals that travel down the spinal cord and suppress motor neuron activity, effectively disconnecting the brain's motor commands from the muscles they would normally activate. This paralysis is protective, preventing us from physically acting out the often intense and action-packed scenarios that unfold in REM dreams. Without it, we would thrash and move dangerously during sleep, potentially injuring ourselves or others sleeping nearby. When this paralysis system malfunctions, as it does in a condition called REM behavior disorder, people do act out their dreams, sometimes injuring themselves or their bed partners in the process. But in healthy sleep, the paralysis holds, creating this strange dissociation between a highly active brain and emotionless body, between vivid internal experience and complete external stillness, between consciousness and unconsciousness existing somehow simultaneously. Only the diaphragm and other muscles essential for breathing are spared from this paralysis, along with the muscles that move the eyes. This is the beautiful paradox of REM sleep, this state where we are both most deeply asleep and most nearly awake, where our brains generate their most elaborate dreams while our bodies lie perfectly still, where the boundary between different states of consciousness becomes blurred and mysterious, where we experience entire worlds of sensation and emotion while lying motionless in the dark. Throughout the night, we pass through these states again and again, each cycle carrying us deeper into the strange and fascinating territory of sleep and dreams, each transition revealing something profound about the complexity and wonder of the human brain. The brain during REM sleep is not resting in any conventional sense. In fact, the brain's metabolism during this phase matches or even exceeds waking levels, a discovery that surprised researchers when they first measured it decades ago. Using techniques that measure glucose consumption and oxygen use in brain tissue, scientists found that the sleeping brain during REM periods is burning energy at rates comparable to or sometimes higher than when we are awake and actively engaged in cognitive tasks. This metabolic intensity reflects the enormous amount of neural activity occurring throughout the cortex and subcortical structures. Billions of neurons are firing, communicating with one another across trillions of synapses, generating the complex patterns of activity that give rise to dreams. The brain is working hard during REM sleep, not in service of navigating the external world or solving practical problems, but in creating elaborate internal simulations, processing emotional experiences, and perhaps consolidating certain types of memories. This high metabolic demand is one reason why sleep, despite being a period of physical rest, is not actually a time when the brain conserves much energy. The sleeping brain remains metabolically expensive, requiring continuous supplies of oxygen and glucose to maintain its activity. The heart continues pumping blood to the brain at substantial rates, and breathing continues to supply the oxygen needed for neural metabolism. In some ways, REM sleep is as demanding for the brain as wakefulness, just directed toward different purposes and producing different types of experiences. During REM sleep, theta waves come to dominate the brain's electrical landscape, creating rhythmic patterns that pulse at frequencies of roughly 4 to 8 cycles per second. These theta waves are particularly prominent in the hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain that plays crucial roles in memory formation and spatial navigation. The prevalence of theta rhythms during REM sleep links this state to processes involving emotion and creativity in ways that scientists are still working to fully understand. Theta waves are also prominent during certain waking states, particularly during creative thinking, meditation, and moments of insight when solutions to problems suddenly become clear. The presence of these same rhythms during REM sleep suggests that similar neural mechanisms might be at work, perhaps allowing the brain to make novel connections between ideas, to process emotional experiences, and to integrate new information with existing knowledge in creative ways. Many artists, writers, and scientists throughout history have reported experiencing creative breakthroughs in dreams, waking with solutions to problems that had seemed intractable during waking hours. While some of these stories may be embellished or misremembered, there is likely truth to the idea that the theta-dominated brain state of REM sleep supports a kind of thinking that is less constrained by logic and convention, more open to unusual associations and novel combinations of ideas. The emotional quality of dreams, their often intense feelings of fear, joy, desire, or anxiety, also seems related to theta activity and to the broader neurochemical environment of REM sleep. If you were to examine an electroencephalogram recording from someone in REM sleep, you would see fast, low-voltage EEG patterns that look surprisingly similar to the patterns seen during alert wakefulness. These rapid, desynchronized waves reflect a cortex that is highly activated, with different regions generating their own patterns of activity rather than falling into the synchronized slow waves that characterize deep non-REM sleep. This fast, low-voltage activity creates the neural substrate for vivid internal experiences, for the rich sensory and emotional content of dreams. The cortex is essentially running its normal programs, activating the same regions that would be engaged during waking perception, emotion, and cognition, but now these regions are operating without external sensory input and without the normal constraints imposed by prefrontal regions involved in logic and reality testing. The result is a state where the brain can generate experiences that feel completely real, completely immersive, even though they are entirely internally generated. Colors can seem vivid, sounds can seem clear, emotions can feel intense, and the dream world can seem as concrete and present as waking reality. The fast EEG patterns reflect this high level of cortical activation, this readiness of neural circuits to generate complex representations and experiences. The neurochemical environment of REM sleep is unique and crucial to understanding why dreams have the qualities they do. Deep in the brainstem, in a region called the pons, certain neurons become intensely active during REM sleep, releasing massive amounts of a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine and flooding the forebrain with this chemical signal. Acetylcholine is involved in many functions including attention, learning, and the activation of cortical circuits. During REM sleep, acetylcholine levels in the cortex rise to match or exceed waking levels, helping to drive the intense activation of brain regions involved in generating dream experiences. The pons essentially sends a wake-up signal to the cortex, activating it as if preparing for waking consciousness, but because other systems keep the body paralyzed and the sensory gates mostly closed, this activation serves internal processing rather than engagement with the external world. The surge of acetylcholine from the brainstem is one of the key mechanisms that initiates and maintains REM sleep, and damage to these pontine regions can disrupt or eliminate REM sleep entirely. The acetylcholine signal spreads widely throughout the forebrain, affecting the thalamus, hippocampus, amygdala, and cortical regions, coordinating their activity into the distinctive pattern of REM sleep. While acetylcholine floods the brain during REM sleep, other important neurotransmitter systems fall silent. Neurons that release serotonin and norepinephrine, chemicals that play important roles in mood regulation, attention, and cognitive control during waking hours, become almost completely inactive during REM sleep. These neurons, located in small clusters in the brainstem, fire steadily during wakefulness, reduce their firing during non-REM sleep, and cease firing almost entirely during REM sleep. This absence of serotonin and norepinephrine has profound effects on how the brain functions during dreams. Without norepinephrine, the normal systems for directing attention and maintaining focus are offline. Without serotonin, the regulatory influences on mood and impulse control are reduced. This neurochemical change helps explain why dreams often feel emotionally intense and why they can shift rapidly from one scene to another without the kind of sustained focus we maintain during waking thought. The removal of rational control associated with these neurotransmitter systems may also contribute to the uncritical acceptance of bizarre dream events. When we dream that we are flying or that the laws of physics no longer apply, we typically do not question these impossibilities because the neural systems that would normally evaluate plausibility and maintain logical coherence are not fully engaged. The silencing of serotonin and norepinephrine neurons removes a layer of executive control, allowing the brain to wander freely through associations and scenarios without the constant reality checking that characterizes waking thought. Histamine, another important neurotransmitter involved in wakefulness and arousal, also quiets during REM sleep, further reducing external arousal and helping to maintain the sleeping state. Histamine neurons in the hypothalamus are most active during waking, helping to keep the brain alert and responsive to the environment. During sleep, and especially during REM sleep, these neurons reduce their activity substantially. This reduction in histamine signaling helps explain why we remain asleep despite the high level of brain activation during REM periods. The brain is intensely active, but that activity is directed inward rather than outward, and the reduction in histamine helps to maintain this inward focus by preventing external stimuli from breaking through into consciousness. This is also why antihistamine medications, which block histamine receptors, often cause drowsiness as a side effect. By reducing histamine signaling, these drugs mimic one of the neurochemical changes that occurs naturally during sleep. The interplay between acetylcholine, which rises during REM sleep, and histamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, which all decline, creates a unique neurochemical environment found at no other time in the daily cycle of sleep and waking. The high levels of acetylcholine during REM sleep have another important effect. Acetylcholine suppresses certain feedback loops in the cortex, particularly those that normally keep neural activity in check and prevent runaway excitation. During waking, the cortex maintains a careful balance between excitation and inhibition, between neurons that activate one another and neurons that suppress activity. This balance prevents any single pattern of activity from dominating and allows for flexible, controlled information processing. But during REM sleep, with feedback inhibition reduced by high acetylcholine levels, the cortex becomes more prone to runaway associations, to cascades of activity that spread widely and rapidly. One thought can trigger another, which triggers another, in chains of association that would be dampened or redirected during waking consciousness. This may be why dreams often have a flowing, associative quality, why one scene transforms seamlessly into another, why characters and locations shift in ways that would be impossible in waking life. The dreaming brain is essentially disinhibited, freed from some of the normal constraints that keep waking thought organized and coherent. This disinhibition may serve important functions, perhaps allowing the brain to explore unusual combinations of ideas, to process emotional experiences without the normal defensive barriers we maintain during waking, or to consolidate memories by integrating them with existing knowledge in creative ways. One of the most striking features of REM sleep is that the visual cortex, the region at the back of the brain responsible for processing visual information from the eyes, becomes intensely active despite the fact that the eyes are closed and no visual information is entering the system. This internally driven activation of visual areas creates the lifelike imagery that characterizes dreams. We see people, places, objects, colors, and movement in dreams with remarkable clarity and detail, all generated entirely by the brain without any input from the actual visual world. Brain imaging studies have shown that during REM sleep, visual cortical areas light up with activity patterns similar to those seen when we look at actual scenes during waking. Different parts of the visual cortex, specialized for processing different aspects of vision such as color, motion, faces, or spatial layout, activate in coordinated ways to create coherent visual experiences. This is a remarkable feat of neural simulation. The brain contains detailed models of visual reality, learned through years of waking experience, and during dreams it can run these models forward, generating visual experiences that draw on memory and imagination. The vividness of dream imagery varies between individuals and between different dreams, but for many people, the visual quality of dreams can approach or even match the clarity of waking vision. We may see the faces of loved ones, walk through familiar or imaginary landscapes, witness impossible events, all rendered in rich visual detail by a visual cortex that is operating in a kind of simulation mode. Adding to the intensity of dream imagery are bursts of activity called PGO waves, which surge from the brainstem through the pons and lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus and up into visual regions of the cortex. These waves, whose name comes from the three regions they traverse, pons, geniculate, occipital, are one of the most reliable markers of REM sleep in animals where they can be directly recorded. In humans, they are more difficult to measure directly, but indirect evidence strongly suggests they occur here too. PGO waves are thought to play a crucial role in amplifying and perhaps even triggering the hallucinatory quality of dreams. These waves arrive in bursts, particularly during periods of rapid eye movement, and they may correspond to shifts in dream imagery, to moments when the dream scene suddenly changes or when particularly vivid images appear. Some researchers have proposed that PGO waves serve as an internal trigger for updating the dream simulation, essentially telling the visual cortex to generate a new scene or introduce new elements into the ongoing dream narrative. The waves may also help to integrate activity across different brain regions, coordinating the visual, emotional, motor, and cognitive aspects of dream experience into a coherent whole. The relationship between PGO waves and the subjective experience of dreaming is still being investigated, but these distinctive bursts of neural activity clearly play an important role in the neurophysiology of REM sleep. Perhaps the most visible sign of REM sleep, the feature that gave this state its name, is the rapid eye movements themselves. Behind closed lids, the eyes dart back and forth, sometimes smoothly, sometimes in quick saccades, creating movement patterns that can be detected both by electrodes placed near the eyes and sometimes even by watching a sleeping person's face. These eye movements are fascinating because they appear to track imagined scenes despite the eyes being closed and despite the visual cortex being disconnected from actual visual input. Early researchers debated whether the eye movements corresponded to the content of dreams, whether someone dreaming of watching a tennis match might show horizontal eye movements, or someone dreaming of climbing stairs might show vertical movements. While the correspondence is not always perfect or literal, there does appear to be some relationship between eye movement direction and dream content. The eye movements seem to reflect the brain's attempt to scan the visual scenes it is generating internally, as if the same neural systems that control eye movements during waking vision continue to operate during REM sleep, now directed by the internally generated imagery rather than by external visual scenes. The muscles that control eye movement are among the few voluntary muscles not paralyzed during REM sleep, perhaps because these movements serve some function in the dreaming process, or perhaps simply because they pose little danger even if they occur. Whatever their precise function, these rapid eye movements remain one of the most reliable and striking markers of this unique state of consciousness, a visible sign from outside the sleeping body that the brain within is engaged in the extraordinary process of dreaming. Deep within the brain, beneath the cortex with its elaborate folds and sophisticated processing centers, lies a collection of structures collectively known as the limbic system. These ancient brain regions, evolved long before humans developed language or abstract reasoning, are fundamentally concerned with emotion, motivation, and memory. They include the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure that plays a crucial role in processing emotional significance, particularly fear and threat-related information. They include the hippocampus, involved in forming new memories and navigating space. They include regions like the anterior cingulate cortex and parts of the hypothalamus, all working together to generate and regulate emotional experiences. During REM sleep, the limbic system becomes highly active, sometimes even more active than during waking hours. Brain imaging studies have shown that blood flow and metabolic activity surge in these emotional centers during REM periods, lighting up the amygdala and related structures with intense activity. This heightened limbic activation has profound implications for the nature of dreams. It means that dreams are not primarily intellectual exercises or abstract puzzles, but deeply emotional experiences. The dreaming brain is processing feelings as much as or more than it is processing facts or logic. This emotional intensity is one of the defining features of dreams, one of the qualities that makes them so memorable and so impactful when we recall them after waking. The intense activation of the limbic system during REM sleep explains why dreams are often emotional, strange, and intense in ways that our waking thoughts typically are not. When we think during waking hours, our prefrontal cortex maintains substantial control over the process, keeping our thoughts organized, reality-based, and relatively emotionally modulated. But during REM sleep, with the prefrontal cortex less active and the limbic system running at full intensity, emotions take center stage. The amygdala, responding to dream content as if it were real, generates genuine emotional reactions. If we dream of a threatening situation, the amygdala activates fear responses. If we dream of a joyful reunion, emotional centers generate feelings of happiness. These are not pale imitations of emotion but real neurological and physiological responses. Our heart rate may increase during a frightening dream. We may wake with our faces wet from tears shed during a sad dream. The emotions in dreams are authentic, even though the situations triggering them are imaginary. The strangeness of dreams, their bizarre juxtapositions and impossible scenarios, also relates to this emotional dominance. The dreaming brain seems to construct narratives that express emotional states rather than following logical cause and effect. A dream about being unprepared for an exam might reflect anxiety, with the specific scenario being less important than the emotional theme it expresses. The intensity of dreams, the way they can feel more emotionally powerful than ordinary waking experiences, comes from this combination of heightened limbic activity and reduced prefrontal control, creating a perfect storm for intense emotional experience. Research into dream content has revealed that emotions appear in roughly 70 to 75% of REM dreams that people report after being awakened in sleep laboratories. This is a remarkably high percentage, indicating that emotional content is not just common in dreams but nearly universal. When people are awakened during REM sleep and asked to describe their dreams immediately, most report some emotional quality to the experience. The emotions can be subtle or overwhelming, pleasant or unpleasant, but they are usually present in some form. This prevalence of emotion in dreams stands in interesting contrast to our waking mental life, where much of our thinking is relatively emotionally neutral, concerned with practical tasks, factual information, or abstract reasoning. Dreams seem to prioritize emotional processing and expression in a way that waking thought does not. Some researchers have proposed that this emotional focus serves important functions, perhaps allowing the brain to process and integrate emotional experiences from waking life, to work through unresolved feelings, or to maintain emotional equilibrium by providing a space where feelings can be fully experienced and expressed without real-world consequences. Others suggest that the emotional content of dreams is simply a byproduct of the neurochemical state of REM sleep, with no specific function beyond reflecting the active limbic system. Whatever the explanation, the emotional richness of dreams is one of their most consistent and defining characteristics. When researchers examine the specific emotions reported in dreams, an interesting pattern emerges. Negative emotions such as confusion, sadness, guilt, and disgust tend to dominate, particularly in dreams that would be classified as nightmares or highly unpleasant experiences. These difficult emotions appear more frequently in dream reports than positive emotions like joy, contentment, or love, though positive emotions certainly occur as well. The prevalence of negative emotions in dreams has puzzled researchers and has led to various theories. Some suggest that dreams serve as a kind of threat simulation system, allowing the brain to practice responding to dangerous or difficult situations in a safe environment. By repeatedly experiencing and navigating threats in dreams, we might be better prepared to handle real threats during waking life. Others propose that dreams help process and integrate negative experiences from waking life, that the brain needs to work through difficult emotions, and that sleep provides a time when this processing can occur without the defenses and distractions of waking consciousness. Still others suggest that negative emotions may simply be more salient and memorable than positive ones, leading to a reporting bias where unpleasant dreams are recalled and recounted more often than pleasant ones. Whatever the underlying cause, the fact remains that dream content skews toward the emotionally challenging, with confusion, anxiety, sadness, and other difficult feelings appearing frequently in the dream reports collected by researchers over decades of study. Interestingly, fear, while certainly present in many dreams, is not actually the most common dream emotion as might be expected given how much attention nightmares receive. Studies that have carefully categorized emotions in dream reports find that confusion, frustration, and anxiety appear as frequently or more frequently than outright fear. This makes sense when we consider the content of typical dreams. Many dreams involve being lost, being unable to complete a task, searching for something we cannot find, or dealing with frustrating obstacles and confusing situations. These scenarios generate feelings of bewilderment, helplessness, or irritation rather than terror. True nightmares, characterized by intense fear that wakes the dreamer, represent a subset of unpleasant dreams rather than the majority. The emotional landscape of dreams is more varied and nuanced than simple fear. We experience the full range of negative emotions in our dreams, from mild annoyance to profound grief, from vague unease to overwhelming panic. Each dream draws on the rich emotional palette available to the human brain, painting scenarios in feelings as much as in images and events. The emotions that appear in dreams often seem to reflect concerns, anxieties, and unresolved issues from waking life, though sometimes in symbolic or distorted form that makes the connection less than obvious. The timing of nightmares within the night follows an interesting pattern. Nightmares tend to peak in the later REM cycles, those that occur closer to morning when REM sleep is longest and most intense. This makes sense given what we know about the structure of sleep across the night. As dawn approaches, REM periods lengthen from the brief 5 or 10-minute episodes of early night to extended periods that can last 30 minutes or more. During these long morning REM periods, dreams become more elaborate, more emotionally intense, and apparently more likely to include frightening content. The extended time in REM sleep may allow for more complex dream narratives to develop, creating situations with higher emotional stakes. The neurochemical environment of late-night REM may also differ slightly from early-night REM, perhaps supporting more intense emotional experiences. Additionally, we are more likely to wake up spontaneously from these late REM periods because they occur closer to our natural waking time, meaning that nightmares occurring in early morning are more likely to be remembered than those occurring in the middle of the night. Many people who suffer from frequent nightmares report that they occur in the hours before dawn, during that period when REM sleep dominates and dreams reach their peak intensity. This pattern has implications for understanding and treating nightmare disorders, as interventions might focus on this vulnerable period of the sleep cycle. Gender differences in nightmare frequency have been documented across multiple studies and populations. Women report experiencing more nightmares than men, particularly during adolescence and adulthood. This difference emerges around puberty and persists throughout much of the lifespan. The reasons for this gender difference are not entirely clear and likely involve multiple factors. Hormonal differences may play a role, as sex hormones can influence sleep architecture and emotional processing. Women also report higher rates of anxiety disorders and post-traumatic stress disorder, conditions strongly associated with frequent nightmares, which might partially explain the difference. Socialization may contribute as well, with women perhaps being more willing to acknowledge and report unpleasant emotional experiences, including nightmares. Women may also have better dream recall in general, remembering more dreams of all types, which would naturally lead to reporting more nightmares. Some researchers have proposed that differences in life experiences and exposure to trauma might contribute, though this does not fully explain the pattern since the gender difference appears even in populations without obvious differences in trauma exposure. The gender gap in nightmare frequency tends to narrow in older age, with elderly men and women reporting more similar rates of nightmares. This complex pattern suggests that the explanation involves an interaction of biological, psychological, and social factors rather than any single cause. Dreams about deceased loved ones represent a particularly poignant category of dream experience, and research has shown that these grief dreams increase during emotionally significant periods. When someone close to us dies, they often appear in our dreams with striking frequency, sometimes for years after their death. These dreams can take many forms. Sometimes the deceased person appears alive and well, and the dreamer forgets within the dream that they have died, experiencing their presence as if nothing had changed. Sometimes the dream involves the moment of death or saying goodbye. Sometimes the deceased person appears to offer comfort, guidance, or reassurance. The emotional tone of these dreams varies widely. Some are distressing, forcing the dreamer to confront loss anew upon waking. Others are comforting, providing a sense of continued connection or resolution. Grief dreams seem to increase not only immediately after a loss but also around anniversaries, birthdays, holidays, and other times when the absence of the deceased person is particularly felt. This suggests that dreams reflect our emotional preoccupations and concerns, giving form to the grief and longing we carry. Some cultures view dreams of the deceased as actual visitations, as moments when the boundary between the living and the dead becomes permeable. Others view them as psychological processing of loss, as the brain's way of working through attachment and gradually accepting absence. Whatever their interpretation, dreams of deceased loved ones demonstrate the powerful connection between waking emotional life and dream content. While the limbic system runs hot during REM sleep, generating intense emotional experiences, another crucial brain region shows the opposite pattern. The prefrontal cortex, particularly the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex involved in logical reasoning, planning, and self-monitoring, partially deactivates during REM sleep. Brain imaging studies show reduced blood flow and metabolic activity in these frontal regions compared to waking levels. This deactivation has profound effects on the nature of dreams. The prefrontal cortex is often described as the executive control center of the brain, the region that allows us to think logically, plan ahead, inhibit inappropriate responses, and maintain awareness of ourselves as agents acting in the world. When this region is less active, many of these executive functions are diminished or absent. We lose the ability to think critically about what we are experiencing. We cannot step back and analyze whether events make sense. We have difficulty planning or thinking through consequences. Our sense of agency, of being a self who directs actions and makes decisions, may become fuzzy or absent. These changes explain many of the peculiar features of dreams. We accept bizarre events without question because the critical faculties that would normally evaluate plausibility are offline. We fail to recognize that we are dreaming because the metacognitive capacity for self-reflection is impaired. We act without thinking through consequences because the planning and impulse control functions of the prefrontal cortex are not fully engaged. This prefrontal deactivation allows impossible events to feel completely normal inside dreams. We can fly, breathe underwater, be in two places at once, or watch the laws of physics bend and break, all without the slightest sense that anything is amiss. A person who has been dead for years can appear in a dream, and we converse with them as if their presence were unremarkable. We can suddenly find ourselves in a different location without having traveled there, and this discontinuity does not strike us as strange. We might look in a mirror and see a different face, or find that our hands have transformed into something else, and accept these impossibilities as simple facts of the dream world. This uncritical acceptance, this inability to recognize the dream state for what it is, results directly from the reduced activity in prefrontal regions that would normally maintain reality testing and logical evaluation. Interestingly, some people can develop the ability to recognize when they are dreaming, a phenomenon called lucid dreaming, which seems to involve a partial reactivation of prefrontal cortex during REM sleep. Brain imaging studies of lucid dreamers show increased activity in frontal regions compared to normal non-lucid dreams, suggesting that even a modest increase in prefrontal function is enough to restore critical thinking and self-awareness. But in typical dreams, the prefrontal cortex remains quiet, allowing the limbic system and sensory cortices to generate experiences unconstrained by logic or reality. The result is the characteristic dream state where the impossible seems ordinary, where we experience events that could never occur in waking life with perfect credulity and acceptance, where the boundaries of reality dissolve and we inhabit worlds governed by emotional logic rather than physical law. This strange state of consciousness, where we are simultaneously experiencing and yet not critically evaluating our experience, where we are aware yet unaware, present yet absent, represents one of the most fascinating aspects of the sleeping brain and its nightly journey through REM sleep and dreams. The creation of dream imagery involves a fascinating reversal of the processes that normally govern perception during waking life. When we are awake and looking at the world around us, sensory information flows in a specific direction through the brain. Light enters the eyes and is converted into neural signals that travel from the retina through the thalamus to the primary visual cortex at the back of the brain. From there, information moves forward through a hierarchy of processing stages, each extracting more complex and abstract features. Early visual areas detect simple things like edges and colors. Later areas recognize shapes, objects, faces, and scenes. The flow is bottom-up, from sensation to perception to recognition and understanding. But during dreams, this entire process operates in reverse. Dream imagery is constructed by reversing these normal perception pathways, running them backward from higher cortical areas down to lower sensory regions. Instead of the visual cortex receiving input from the eyes and building up a representation of the external world, higher-level brain regions that store memories and abstract knowledge send signals downward, activating the visual cortex from within. This top-down activation creates the subjective experience of seeing even though no light is entering the eyes. The visual cortex responds to these internally generated signals much as it would to actual visual input, creating the rich, detailed imagery that characterizes dreams. This reversal of information flow is one of the key mechanisms underlying dream generation, transforming memory and imagination into something that feels perceptually real. During REM sleep, higher cortical areas activate lower sensory regions instead of receiving input from them. Brain regions involved in memory, emotion, and abstract thought send signals that propagate downward through the cortical hierarchy, lighting up sensory processing areas as if actual sensory information were arriving. This top-down activation can produce remarkably detailed and vivid sensory experiences. The visual cortex generates images, the auditory cortex generates sounds, and even tactile sensations can arise from activation of somatosensory regions. The brain essentially talks to itself, with higher regions telling lower regions what to perceive. This internal signal flow creates a closed loop where the brain generates its own input, processes that input through its normal sensory pathways, and then uses the results to guide further internal generation. The system is self-sustaining and self-referential, creating elaborate sensory experiences without any actual sensory input from the external world. This mechanism explains why dreams can feel so real, why we can see and hear and feel things with such clarity despite lying in darkness with our eyes closed. The same neural machinery that processes actual perception is being activated, just from internal sources rather than external ones. The sensory cortices cannot necessarily distinguish between activation arising from the eyes and ears versus activation arising from memory systems and higher cortical regions, so they generate conscious experiences in either case. A particularly important brain region in this process of converting abstract thoughts and memories into vivid sensory imagery is the parieto-occipito-temporal junction, a meeting point where the parietal, occipital, and temporal lobes converge. This region, sometimes called the pot junction, sits at a crucial crossroads in the brain's information processing networks. It receives input from multiple sensory modalities and from memory systems, and it appears to play a special role in binding different types of information into coherent, multimodal experiences. During dreaming, the parieto-occipito-temporal junction seems to serve as a translation mechanism, converting abstract thoughts, memories, and emotional states into the concrete sensory imagery that populates our dreams. An abstract feeling of anxiety might be translated into a specific scenario of being chased. A memory of a childhood home might be reconstructed as a visual scene we can walk through in a dream. The pot junction takes the raw material of thought and emotion and renders it in sensory form, creating the immersive quality of dream experiences. Research into this region has revealed its crucial importance not just for dreaming but for various aspects of consciousness and mental imagery during waking as well. People who are asked to imagine visual scenes while awake show activation in this region, suggesting it plays a general role in visualization and mental simulation. The importance of the parieto-occipito-temporal junction for dreaming has been dramatically demonstrated in neurological patients. Damage to this region can eliminate dreaming entirely while completely sparing REM sleep itself. These patients still cycle through sleep stages normally. Their brain waves still show the characteristic patterns of REM sleep. Their eyes still move rapidly behind closed lids. The neurochemical changes of REM still occur. But when awakened during REM periods, these patients report no dreams, no visual imagery, no experiences whatsoever. They describe their sleep as a blank, an absence, empty darkness rather than the rich experimental landscape most people inhabit during REM sleep. This dissociation between the physiological state of REM sleep and the subjective experience of dreaming provides powerful evidence that specific brain structures are necessary for generating dream content, and that REM sleep itself is not sufficient. REM sleep provides the neural conditions conducive to dreaming, but the actual construction of dream imagery requires intact function of regions like the pot junction that can generate and integrate sensory representations. Patients with this kind of damage often also report loss of the ability to voluntarily imagine visual scenes while awake, to picture faces or places in their mind's eye, suggesting that dreaming and waking imagination rely on overlapping neural mechanisms. The loss of dreaming following pot damage has been described by patients as profoundly disturbing, like losing an entire dimension of mental life, underscoring how important and meaningful the dream experience is to human consciousness. While the cortex generates vivid sensory and emotional experiences during REM sleep, motor systems throughout the brain and spinal cord are actively inhibited, preventing dream enactment and keeping the body still despite whatever adventures might be unfolding in the dream world. This inhibition operates at multiple levels. At the highest level, motor cortical areas that would normally plan and initiate voluntary movements show reduced activity during REM. At lower levels, neurons in the brainstem actively suppress motor neurons in the spinal cord, blocking the transmission of any movement commands that do manage to get generated. The motor neurons that control skeletal muscles receive continuous inhibitory input during REM sleep, keeping them quiet despite whatever signals might be coming from higher brain regions. This paralysis is so complete that even attempts to move within a dream, running from danger or reaching for an object, produce no actual muscle activity beyond perhaps tiny twitches. The dissociation between motor intention and motor output is absolute. We can dream of performing elaborate physical actions, can feel ourselves running or fighting or dancing, but our bodies remain motionless. This inhibition serves an obvious protective function, preventing injury that would occur if we thrashed around acting out dreams. It also creates an interesting phenomenological situation where we can have experiences of movement and agency without actual movement occurring, where the subjective experience of action becomes completely divorced from physical action. During REM sleep, motivational signals, the neural activity that normally drives goal-directed behavior and physical action, are redirected backward into perceptual systems rather than forward into motor output. When we are awake and motivated to do something, to reach for a cup of coffee or walk across a room, signals flow from motivational centers in the brain like the striatum and prefrontal cortex forward into motor planning and execution systems. But during REM sleep, with motor output blocked by active inhibition, these motivational signals instead feed back into sensory and perceptual regions, contributing to dream content rather than producing behavior. A motivation to escape danger gets translated into dream imagery of running away. A desire for food might generate dream scenarios involving eating. Sexual motivation might produce erotic dream content. The motivations and drives that would normally impel physical action in the waking world instead shape the internal simulation, the dream narrative, creating scenarios that reflect our desires, fears, and concerns but without any outlet for actual behavior. This redirection of motivational signals into perceptual systems rather than motor systems is another key mechanism underlying dream formation. It helps explain why dreams often have such strong motivational themes, why they frequently involve pursuit of goals, attempts to achieve something, efforts to escape from threats. The dreaming brain retains all the motivational systems that drive behavior during waking, but with the motor outlet blocked, these motivations express themselves purely in imagined scenarios. Through all these mechanisms, the combination of top-down sensory activation, motor inhibition, and redirection of motivation into perception, dreams form immersive virtual worlds that are completely detached from physical action. The dream environment feels real because real sensory processing systems are being activated. It feels important because real emotional and motivational systems are engaged. We feel present in the dream world because consciousness arises from the same neural substrates during dreaming as during waking. But despite this subjective reality, the dream is entirely internal, entirely simulation. No actual light reaches our eyes to create the scenes we see. No actual sounds reach our ears. We are not moving through real space but through imagined space constructed moment by our dreaming brains. This virtual world can be remarkably stable and coherent, maintaining consistent laws and logic within a given dream even if those laws differ from waking reality. Or it can be fluid and shifting, with scenes and characters morphing unpredictably. The dream world is unconstrained by physical reality because it is not constructed from physical inputs but from memory, imagination, and the autonomous activity of neural networks freed from their normal task of representing and navigating the external world. In this sense, dreams represent perhaps the purest form of virtual reality, entirely self-contained simulations generated by and experienced within a single brain, requiring no external technology, no input devices or displays, just the intrinsic capacity of neural tissue to generate and sustain complex patterns of activity that give rise to conscious experience. The content that fills these dream worlds is not random but shows clear relationships to waking experiences. Dream content often incorporates recent experiences as distorted replays, a phenomenon that has been documented extensively in dream research. Events from the previous day, and to a lesser extent from recent days and weeks, appear in dreams with frequency well above what would be expected by chance. This is sometimes called the day residue effect, reflecting the idea that fragments of waking experience persist into sleep and influence dream content. The incorporation is rarely direct or literal, however. We do not usually dream exact replays of daily events as if watching a recording. Instead, elements from waking experience appear transformed, recombined with other memories, distorted in various ways, embedded in new contexts and narratives. A conversation with a coworker might reappear in a dream but in a different location with different emotional valence. A problem we struggled with during the day might manifest as a symbolic scenario involving entirely different specifics but similar emotional or cognitive themes. The face of someone we met briefly might appear on a different character in a dream. This incorporation of recent experience suggests that dreams draw heavily on recent memory, using the most accessible and emotionally salient material from waking life as raw material for dream construction. Some researchers believe this reflects active memory processing, that the brain is working during sleep to consolidate recent experiences, and that dreams are a window into this consolidation process, showing us the material being manipulated and integrated. The hippocampus plays a crucial role in this process, serving as a bridge that links short-term memories from recent experiences to long-term storage distributed throughout the cortex. During waking, the hippocampus rapidly encodes new experiences, forming temporary representations that allow us to remember what just happened. During sleep, particularly during both non-REM slow-wave sleep and REM sleep, the hippocampus appears to replay these recent experiences, reactivating the patterns of neural activity that occurred during the original events. This replay happens at faster speeds than real time, compressing hours of experience into much briefer reactivation episodes. As the hippocampus replays recent memories, it communicates with cortical regions, helping to transfer and integrate information from temporary hippocampal storage into more permanent cortical networks. This dialogue between hippocampus and cortex during sleep is thought to be essential for memory consolidation, for transforming fleeting experiences into lasting knowledge and skills. The process strengthens important memories while allowing less important information to fade. It integrates new experiences with existing knowledge, finding connections and patterns. Dreams may emerge from or reflect this memory consolidation process, with dream content representing the material being actively processed and reorganized during sleep. When hippocampal cortical communication during sleep is disrupted, memory consolidation suffers, and people show impaired retention of information learned before sleep, suggesting this sleep-dependent process is not merely optional but essential for optimal memory function. Rather than replaying memories exactly as they were encoded, dreams remix memory fragments, recombining elements from different experiences, blending recent and remote memories, creating novel combinations and scenarios that never actually occurred. This remixing is not random but appears to follow associative and emotional logic. Memories with thematic similarities get combined. Elements that provoke similar emotions get blended together. The dreaming brain seems to be searching for patterns and connections across experiences rather than simply reviewing individual memories in isolation. This creative recombination might serve important cognitive functions. By finding unexpected connections between different experiences and domains of knowledge, the brain might generate insights and integrate information in useful ways. The recombination might also support emotional processing by allowing multiple emotional experiences to be examined together, finding common threads and perhaps developing more general emotional understandings or coping strategies. The fact that dreams remix rather than replay memories also explains why dream content, while clearly related to waking experience, is typically not a simple review of daily events. We dream of strange hybrid scenarios, impossible combinations of people and places, narrative sequences that could never happen in waking life. Yet beneath the surface strangeness, the emotional themes, concerns, and preoccupations of waking life often remain evident. Dreams are creative acts, constructive processes where the brain generates novel combinations from the vast repository of memory and knowledge accumulated over a lifetime. Each dream is in some sense unique, a one-time only production that reflects the particular state of the brain and the particular mix of recent experiences, emotional concerns, and random neural fluctuations present at that moment during that night's sleep. Among the many theories proposed to explain why we dream, one of the most influential suggests that memory consolidation is a key function of the dreaming process. According to this view, dreams are not merely byproducts of neural activity during sleep but serve important cognitive purposes related to how the brain processes, organizes, and stores information gathered during waking hours. The theory proposes that during REM sleep and dreaming, the brain actively works to transfer memories from temporary storage to more permanent repositories, to strengthen important memories while allowing less relevant information to fade, and to integrate new experiences with existing knowledge in ways that enhance understanding and future behavior. This consolidation process involves complex interactions between the hippocampus, which temporarily holds recent memories, and various cortical regions where long-term memories are ultimately stored. The dream experience itself, the vivid imagery and narrative content we consciously experience during REM sleep, may reflect this consolidation work in progress, offering a window into the brain's nighttime efforts to organize and make sense of accumulated experience. Research supporting this theory has shown that people who are deprived of REM sleep after learning new information show impaired memory for that information compared to people allowed normal sleep, suggesting that REM sleep plays an important role in cementing memories. The exact mechanisms remain debated, and not all researchers agree that memory consolidation is the primary or only function of dreaming, but the evidence linking sleep, dreams, and memory has grown steadily stronger over decades of investigation. Different aspects of memory appear to benefit from different stages of sleep, with REM sleep particularly important for strengthening emotional memories and the associative links between different pieces of information. Emotional events, experiences that provoke strong feelings whether positive or negative, seem to receive special processing during REM sleep. Studies have shown that emotional memories are better retained after a period of sleep containing REM compared to equal time awake or compared to sleep with REM suppressed. The amygdala, which becomes highly active during REM sleep as discussed earlier, appears to play a crucial role in this emotional memory consolidation. The interactions between the amygdala, hippocampus, and cortical regions during REM sleep seem to help extract the emotional significance from experiences and integrate that emotional information with factual details about what happened. This process may serve adaptive purposes, helping us learn what to fear, what to approach, What situations produce positive or negative outcomes, allowing emotional experiences to shape future behavior appropriately. REM sleep also appears particularly important for strengthening associative links between memories, for finding connections between seemingly disparate pieces of information. The creative, associative quality of dreams themselves may reflect this process. When we dream of unexpected combinations of people, places, and events, the brain may be actively exploring and strengthening associative networks, creating connections that might prove useful for creative problem-solving, insight, and flexible thinking during waking hours. While sleep helps strengthen important memories, it also serves another crucial function that might seem contradictory: promoting forgetting of unimportant information. Not everything we experience during the day deserves to be remembered long-term. The brain must be selective, preserving what matters while allowing trivial details to fade, preventing memory systems from becoming overwhelmed with irrelevant information. Recent research has identified specific neurons that appear to actively suppress unimportant memories during sleep. These neurons produce a chemical called melanin concentrating hormone, or MCH, and they become active primarily during REM sleep. MCH neurons actively suppress unimportant memories, sending signals that help clear away unnecessary information, allowing the brain to forget efficiently. When researchers have experimentally increased the activity of MCH neurons in animals during sleep, memory for previously learned information decreases. When MCH neurons are inhibited, memory retention improves, but in ways that might be maladaptive, preserving too much irrelevant detail. This active forgetting process appears to be just as important as the consolidation of important memories. The brain must strike a balance between remembering and forgetting, and sleep provides a time when both processes can occur, when the wheat of important information can be separated from the chaff of irrelevant details. Dreams may reflect both sides of this process, both the strengthening of salient memories and the active suppression of trivia, contributing to the strange mix of familiar and unfamiliar elements that characterize dream content. The neurochemical environment of REM sleep, while conducive to emotional processing and associative thinking, has a curious drawback when it comes to memory encoding. The aminergic shutdown that occurs during REM sleep, the silencing of neurons that release norepinephrine and serotonin, actually impairs stable memory encoding during this period. These neurotransmitters, which fall silent during REM as discussed earlier, play important roles in forming strong, stable memories during waking hours. Norepinephrine in particular seems crucial for the consolidation of new memories as they form. Without adequate levels of these chemicals, new experiences are encoded only weakly and may not transfer successfully to long-term storage. This has a direct consequence for dreams. The experiences we have during dreams, despite feeling vivid and real in the moment, are often poorly encoded and rapidly forgotten. The brain is in a state that supports processing of existing memories but not the formation of strong new memories about the processing itself, about the dream experiences. This neurochemical situation creates a strange paradox. Dreams can be intensely memorable in the moment, can feel important and significant, yet they slip away rapidly upon waking because they were never properly encoded into stable memory traces in the first place. The very neurochemical conditions that make dreaming possible, particularly the absence of norepinephrine, simultaneously ensure that dreams will be largely forgotten. This neurochemical impairment of memory encoding causes rapid dream amnesia upon waking, a phenomenon familiar to anyone who has had the frustrating experience of waking from a vivid dream only to have it evaporate within moments. The dream that felt so real and important just seconds ago becomes foggy, fragmentary, and then vanishes almost completely, leaving perhaps a vague sense of having dreamed something but no clear memory of content. This forgetting happens with remarkable speed. Research tracking dream recall has found that even when people are awakened directly from REM sleep and asked immediately to report their dreams, some forgetting has already occurred in the few seconds it takes to fully wake and begin speaking. The transition from the neurochemical state of REM sleep to the neurochemical state of waking involves rapid changes in neurotransmitter levels, including a surge of norepinephrine as arousal systems activate. But this surge comes too late to help encode the dream that just ended. The dream memories formed without adequate norepinephrine support are fragile and unstable, vulnerable to rapid decay. In contrast to abrupt awakenings, gradual waking preserves dream imagery longer, allowing more time for the dream content to be consciously processed and transferred into more stable memory. When we wake up naturally, without external disruption, the transition from sleep to waking happens more slowly. We may pass through a hypnopompic state, a transitional period where we are not fully asleep but not yet fully awake, where dream imagery may persist even as awareness of the external world begins to return. During this gradual transition, we have an opportunity to mentally review the dream while it is still relatively fresh, to rehearse the content, to put it into words either mentally or by speaking aloud or writing it down. This rehearsal is crucial for stabilizing dream memories. By actively thinking about the dream during and immediately after waking, we give the memory a chance to be re-encoded under more favorable neurochemical conditions, with normal levels of norepinephrine now available to support memory formation. The dream content transitions from a fragile, unstable trace formed during REM sleep to a more stable memory formed in the waking state. People who remember their dreams frequently often report waking naturally and lying still for a few moments, mentally reviewing the dream before getting up. This practice takes advantage of the brief window when dream memories are still accessible but beginning to fade, capturing them before they vanish. One of the most effective strategies for improving dream recall is journaling immediately upon waking, a practice that strengthens dream recall pathways through regular use and reinforcement. When we consistently write down dreams upon waking, several beneficial effects occur. First, the act of writing forces us to put dream content into words and narrative structure, which helps organize and stabilize the memories. Second, the practice trains us to pay attention to dreams and to wake with the intention of remembering them, which appears to improve recall through a kind of auto-suggestion or expectation effect. Third, over time, the regular practice strengthens whatever neural pathways support dream recall, making the process easier and more automatic. People who keep dream journals consistently often report that their dream recall improves substantially within a few weeks of starting the practice, remembering more dreams and remembering them in greater detail. The journal also creates an external record that allows dreams to be reviewed later, revealing patterns and recurring themes that might not be apparent from individual dream memories. Some people find that reading old dream journal entries can trigger recall of additional details from those dreams that were not initially written down. The practice of dream journaling has a long history in various psychological and spiritual traditions, valued both as a method for self-understanding and as a way to preserve this otherwise ephemeral aspect of mental life. For anyone interested in exploring their dream life more fully, keeping a journal by the bedside and writing immediately upon waking, before getting up or doing anything else, is perhaps the single most effective technique available. For most people, dreams unfold with a kind of passive acceptance, where we simply experience whatever scenarios the dreaming brain presents without questioning their reality or recognizing that we are asleep. But some dreamers, either spontaneously or through deliberate practice, regain self-awareness while dreaming, achieving a remarkable state where they become conscious of the fact that they are dreaming even as the dream continues. This phenomenon, known as lucid dreaming, represents a fascinating alteration of normal dream consciousness. In a lucid dream, the dreamer maintains awareness that the experience is a dream rather than waking reality, yet continues to experience vivid dream imagery and narrative. This dual awareness, simultaneously being immersed in the dream world and knowing it is not real, creates a unique state of consciousness unlike either normal dreaming or waking. Lucid dreamers often describe a sense of excitement or wonder when lucidity dawns, a moment of realization that they are dreaming and that the normal rules and limitations of waking life no longer apply. Some people experience lucid dreams rarely and accidentally, perhaps just a few times in their lives. Others develop the ability to induce lucidity regularly through various training techniques. The experience varies in intensity and stability. Sometimes lucidity is fleeting, lasting only moments before the dreamer either wakes up or slips back into normal non-lucid dreaming. Other times, lucidity persists for extended periods, allowing for elaborate conscious exploration of the dream environment. Lucid dreaming represents a hybrid state between sleep and wakefulness, combining features of both conditions in a way that blurs the usual boundaries between these states of consciousness. The brain during lucid dreaming shows a unique pattern of activity that differs from both normal REM sleep and from waking consciousness, incorporating elements of each. The dreamer is clearly asleep by objective criteria, showing the rapid eye movements, muscle paralysis, and overall brain activation characteristic of REM sleep. Yet aspects of consciousness normally associated with waking, particularly self-awareness and metacognition, the ability to think about one's own mental states, have somehow been restored or maintained despite the sleeping state. This hybrid quality has made lucid dreaming a valuable tool for researchers studying consciousness itself, as it provides a naturally occurring window into how different aspects of consciousness can be dissociated and recombined. The lucid dreaming state demonstrates that sleep and waking are not monolithic, all-or-nothing conditions, but rather involve multiple neural systems that can be in different states simultaneously. It is possible to have a highly activated cortex generating vivid experiences, a characteristic of both waking and REM sleep, while also having motor paralysis, a characteristic of REM sleep but not waking, while also having metacognitive awareness, a characteristic of waking but usually absent in normal REM sleep. Lucid dreaming reveals the modular nature of consciousness, showing that the various components we usually experience as a unified whole can be mixed and matched in different combinations. Research using brain imaging and electrophysiology has revealed that lucid dreamers show heightened prefrontal parietal connectivity compared to people in normal non-lucid REM sleep. The prefrontal cortex, as discussed earlier, typically shows reduced activity during normal REM sleep, which explains the lack of critical thinking and self-awareness in typical dreams. But during lucid dreams, activity in prefrontal regions, particularly the frontopolar cortex and dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, increases significantly. These regions become more active and also show enhanced functional connectivity with parietal regions involved in self-representation and attention. This increased frontoparietal connectivity appears to be the neural signature of lucidity, the brain state that supports the restoration of self-awareness and metacognition during sleep. The prefrontal cortex regains some of its normal waking function, allowing the dreamer to think critically about their experience, to recognize impossibilities and inconsistencies, and to realize they are dreaming. Yet this prefrontal reactivation is not complete. It remains at intermediate levels between normal REM sleep and full waking, which may be why lucid dreams retain their dreamlike qualities even as the dreamer gains awareness. The enhanced connectivity between frontal and parietal regions suggests these areas are communicating more effectively during lucid dreams, coordinating their activity in ways that support conscious self-reflection while maintaining the overall REM sleep state. One of the most striking neurophysiological markers of the transition to lucidity is a surge in gamma activity, high-frequency brainwaves oscillating at roughly 30 to 100 cycles per second. Gamma activity is associated during waking with conscious awareness, attention, and the binding of different features into unified perceptual experiences. At the moment of lucid dream onset, when a dreamer suddenly realizes they are dreaming, electroencephalogram recordings show a dramatic increase in gamma band oscillations, particularly in frontal regions of the brain. This gamma surge appears to reflect the sudden integration of information across brain regions, the binding together of dream experience with metacognitive awareness in a way that produces the distinctive quality of lucid consciousness. The timing of gamma increases corresponds closely with subjective reports of when lucidity began, providing objective validation of the dreamer's introspective reports. Not all researchers agree on the interpretation of these gamma oscillations, with some suggesting they might partly reflect muscle artifacts from tiny movements rather than pure brain activity. But the preponderance of evidence supports the idea that gamma activity genuinely increases during lucid dreaming and plays a role in generating the lucid state. The gamma surge at lucidity onset represents a kind of wake-up call to the cortex, activating networks that support self-awareness without fully awakening the person from sleep. Along with increased gamma activity, lucid dreaming is also characterized by increased alpha connectivity, an enhancement of coherent alpha band oscillations, roughly 8 to 12 cycles per second, across different brain regions. Alpha waves are prominent during relaxed wakefulness and during states of internal focus. The increase in alpha connectivity during lucid dreams appears to improve internal coordination across the brain, helping to integrate activity across frontal, parietal, and other cortical regions. This enhanced coordination may support the stable maintenance of lucidity, helping to keep the various aspects of lucid dream consciousness aligned and preventing the dreamer from either losing awareness and slipping back into non-lucid dreaming or becoming too aroused and waking up entirely. Alpha connectivity seems to represent an intermediate level of cortical organization, more coherent than normal REM sleep where brain activity is relatively fragmented and chaotic, but different from waking where external sensory input drives much of the coordination. The balance is delicate. Too little cortical activation and coordination and the dreamer remains non-lucid. Too much activation and the person wakes up. Lucid dreaming requires hitting a narrow window where consciousness is sufficiently organized to support self-awareness but not so strongly activated that sleep itself is disrupted. The increase in alpha connectivity helps maintain this balance. Interestingly, while gamma and alpha activity increase during lucid dreaming, beta power, oscillations in the 13 to 30 cycles per second range, actually decreases compared to waking levels. Beta activity is prominent during alert waking, particularly when attention is directed outward toward the environment and during active cognitive processing of external information. The reduction in beta power during lucid dreams, even as awareness increases, suggests that the brain is reducing sensory interference, dampening the processing of external sensory input to help maintain the dream state. Beta reduction may help prevent the dreamer from becoming too aware of actual sensory information from the sleeping environment, sounds or bodily sensations that might break the immersion in the dream world. By reducing beta activity, the brain maintains a gate against external input even as internal awareness increases. This creates the paradoxical situation where the lucid dreamer becomes more conscious and aware, but that awareness remains directed inward at the dream rather than outward toward the physical environment. The balance of different frequency bands, gamma and alpha increasing while beta decreases, creates a unique neurophysiological signature that distinguishes lucid dreaming from both normal sleeping and normal waking, marking it as a distinct state of consciousness with its own characteristic pattern of neural activity. One of the most remarkable features of lucid dreaming is that lucidity allows voluntary control over dream actions, transforming the dreamer from a passive observer into an active agent who can deliberately shape dream content and behavior. When dreamers become lucid, many report that they can make decisions about what to do next in the dream, can choose to fly or walk through walls, can summon specific people or places, can face fears deliberately rather than fleeing from them. This volitional control is not unlimited or perfect. The dream environment often has a kind of autonomous momentum that resists complete control, and maintaining both lucidity and control simultaneously requires practice and skill. But even partial control represents a dramatic change from the helplessness of normal dreaming, where we are swept along by dream narratives with no agency or choice. Within minutes of waking, the vast majority of dream content is lost unless special effort is made to rehearse and preserve it. This rapid forgetting is not unique to dreams but represents a general feature of memories formed in states with low norepinephrine. The amnesia is not a failure of memory systems per se, but rather a natural consequence of encoding memories without the neurochemical support needed to make them permanent. The extent of dream forgetting is truly remarkable. Studies estimate that people forget 95 to 99% of their dreams within minutes of waking. This means that the vast majority of our dream life is lost to us, that we remember only a tiny fraction of the hours we spend dreaming each night. Over a lifetime, this represents an enormous amount of mental experience that occurs but leaves no lasting trace in memory. For every dream we remember clearly enough to recount to someone else, dozens or hundreds of dreams have vanished without a trace. Some people naturally remember more dreams than others, with significant individual variation in dream recall frequency. Some people report remembering dreams nearly every morning, while others report remembering dreams only rarely, perhaps a few times per year. These differences likely reflect variations in sleep patterns, in how and when people wake up, in how much attention they pay to dreams, and possibly in underlying differences in brain chemistry or structure. But even people with excellent dream recall are forgetting most of their dreams. The remembered dreams are just the tip of an enormous iceberg of dream experience that lies hidden beneath the surface of waking memory. This extensive forgetting might actually serve useful purposes. If we remembered all our dreams with the same clarity as waking experiences, our memories might become cluttered with imaginary events, making it difficult to distinguish what really happened from what was dreamed. The amnesia for dreams helps maintain a clear boundary between waking and dreaming experience. The fragility of dream memories can be partially explained by understanding that dream memories lack external context and grounding that help stabilize waking memories. When we form memories during waking life, those memories are embedded in rich contextual frameworks. We know where we were, what time it was, who else was present, what preceded and followed the event. This contextual information serves as a kind of scaffolding that helps support the memory, providing multiple retrieval cues that can help us recall the event later. We might remember something because we remember where we were when it happened, or who we were with, or what day it was. But dream memories lack this external context. Dreams do not occur in real locations at specific times as part of a continuous stream of waking experience. They are isolated, self-contained experiences that begin and end within the sleeping brain, disconnected from the external world and from the timeline of waking life. Without external context to anchor them, dream memories are more fragile, having fewer retrieval cues and less structure to support them. We cannot remember a dream by thinking about where we were when we had it, except in the trivial sense that we were asleep in bed. We cannot place it in a sequence of waking events because it was not part of that sequence. This lack of external grounding makes dream memories vulnerable to rapid fading. They exist in isolation, without the normal web of associations and contextual connections that help preserve waking memories over time. The way we wake up has a significant impact on dream recall, with abrupt alarms disrupting recall by forcing sudden awakening that does not allow time for dream memories to stabilize. When an alarm clock or other sudden noise jerks us awake, the transition from sleep to waking happens so rapidly that the dream experience is often lost entirely. The startle of the alarm, the immediate activation of arousal systems, and the rapid shift in brain state all work against dream recall. Attention is immediately captured by the need to respond to the alarm, to turn it off, to get up and begin the day. The dream experience, already fragile due to the lack of norepinephrine during its encoding, gets displaced from working memory before it can be consolidated or even consciously examined. Many people have had the experience of being awakened by an alarm and knowing they were just having a dream but being completely unable to remember anything about it. The dream was there a moment ago, but the abrupt awakening severed access to it. Sleep researchers studying dream recall have found that awakenings during or immediately after REM periods yield much better dream recall if they are gentle and gradual rather than sudden and jarring. The method of awakening matters enormously for whether dream content will be remembered or lost. The ability to exert voluntary control during lucid dreams has made this state interesting not only to researchers but also to individuals seeking to use dreams for creative purposes, for problem solving, for psychological exploration, or simply for entertainment. Lucid dreamers have reported using their dreams to practice skills, to rehearse performances, to work through emotional issues, to experience impossible scenarios like flying or visiting alien worlds, all with a vividness and sense of reality that approaches or matches waking experience. The voluntary control in lucid dreams appears to arise from the reactivation of prefrontal regions involved in executive function, the same brain areas that allow us to set goals, make plans, and exert self-control during waking life. Recent research has shown that electrical stimulation can induce lucidity experimentally, providing powerful evidence that lucid dreaming is associated with specific patterns of brain activity that can be artificially enhanced. Researchers have applied transcranial alternating current stimulation to the scalps of sleeping subjects during REM sleep, targeting specific frequencies, particularly in the gamma range around 40 Hz. This gentle electrical stimulation, applied at the right frequency and the right time, can increase the likelihood of lucid dreams occurring during the subsequent minutes of REM sleep. Subjects receiving stimulation report more frequent lucidity, greater self-awareness in dreams, and more control over dream content compared to control conditions with no stimulation or stimulation at different frequencies. This experimental induction of lucidity demonstrates that the phenomenon is not mysterious or mystical but rather results from specific, identifiable patterns of neural activity that can be influenced by external intervention. The success of stimulation approaches also validates the neurophysiological theories of lucid dreaming, confirming that enhanced gamma activity in frontal regions is causally involved in producing the lucid state rather than merely being a correlate or side effect. These findings open up potential future applications where technology might be used to help people access lucid dreaming more reliably, either for research purposes or for therapeutic applications. Speaking of therapeutic applications, lucid dreaming is being explored as a treatment for nightmares, particularly for people suffering from chronic nightmares or from nightmares associated with post-traumatic stress disorder. The reasoning is straightforward. If someone can become lucid during a nightmare and realize they are dreaming, they can potentially confront the frightening content with reduced fear, knowing it is not real, or even deliberately change the nightmare scenario to something less threatening. Training programs teaching people to recognize when they are dreaming and to become lucid have shown promising results in reducing nightmare frequency and intensity. Patients learn various techniques for reality testing, for questioning whether they are awake or asleep, and for recognizing common dream signs that indicate they are dreaming. When they successfully become lucid during a nightmare, they can employ coping strategies such as facing the threat directly, calling for help from dream characters, transforming the threatening element into something harmless, or simply choosing to wake up. Even if full lucidity is not achieved, The training often helps people develop a more critical relationship with their nightmares, reducing the sense of helplessness and passive victimization that nightmares can induce. The approach, sometimes called lucid dreaming therapy or imagery rehearsal therapy when it incorporates lucid dreaming components, has been tested in various populations including trauma survivors, people with frequent idiopathic nightmares, and individuals with nightmare disorder, generally showing improvements in nightmare frequency, sleep quality, and daytime functioning. Research has also revealed that frequent lucid dreamers, people who naturally experience lucid dreams regularly without special training, show unique waking state brain patterns that distinguish them from people who rarely or never experience lucidity. These differences suggest that lucid dreaming ability may be related to stable individual differences in brain structure and function rather than being purely a matter of learned skill. Studies have found that frequent lucid dreamers show greater gray matter volume in the frontopolar cortex, a region involved in metacognitive monitoring and self-reflective thought. They also show distinct patterns of functional connectivity during waking, with enhanced communication between frontal regions and other parts of the cortex. Some research suggests that frequent lucid dreamers may have generally enhanced metacognitive abilities during waking as well, being better at monitoring their own thought processes, at recognizing when they are uncertain or confused, at evaluating their own performance on tasks. These findings raise interesting questions about whether lucid dreaming represents a trait that some people naturally possess more than others, perhaps due to genetic factors or early developmental influences, or whether regular lucid dreaming might actually change the brain over time, strengthening metacognitive networks through repeated practice. The answer likely involves both directions of causation, with some people naturally predisposed to lucidity due to their brain structure and function, while also finding that regular lucid dreaming exercises and strengthens the relevant neural systems, making future lucidity more likely. The unique brain patterns of frequent lucid dreamers provide further evidence that this phenomenon is not imaginary or misreported but reflects genuine differences in how consciousness operates during sleep, differences that are associated with measurable, objective variations in brain activity and structure. Dreaming is not a static phenomenon that emerges fully formed at some point in development but rather varies across development, changing in quality, frequency, and complexity as the brain matures from infancy through childhood, adolescence, and into adulthood and old age. The dreams of a young child are fundamentally different from those of an adolescent or adult, not merely in content but in their basic structure and experimental qualities. Understanding how dreaming changes across the lifespan provides insights into the neural and cognitive foundations of dream consciousness, revealing which brain systems and mental capacities are necessary for different aspects of dreaming to occur. The developmental trajectory of dreaming parallels in many ways the development of waking consciousness and cognition, suggesting deep connections between how we think and imagine during waking hours and how we dream during sleep. Just as a young child's waking thought differs from an adult's in its concreteness, its limited narrative complexity, and its reduced capacity for abstract reasoning, so too do children's dreams differ from adult dreams in parallel ways. By studying how dreaming emerges and evolves across development, researchers gain a unique window into the building blocks of consciousness itself, seeing which components come online first and which require more advanced neural maturation. One of the most striking findings from developmental dream research is that children under 7 report dreams in only about 20% of REM awakenings, a rate far lower than the roughly 80 to 90% dream recall rate found when adults are awakened from REM sleep in laboratory settings. When young children are brought into sleep laboratories and awakened from REM sleep, most of the time they report nothing, saying they were not dreaming or that they do not remember anything. This does not necessarily mean young children are not having any mental experiences during REM sleep, but it suggests that whatever experiences they are having are either less vivid, less memorable, or less narrative-like than adult dreams, making them difficult to report or perhaps not matching the child's understanding of what constitutes a dream. The low recall rate in young children was initially puzzling to researchers because young children clearly do have REM sleep, often spending even more time in REM than adults do. The neurophysiology of REM sleep appears fully functional in early childhood. Yet the subjective experience of dreaming seems to be absent or highly undeveloped. This dissociation between REM sleep physiology and dream experience in young children provides important evidence that REM sleep and dreaming, while related, are not identical phenomena. REM sleep is necessary but not sufficient for the rich dream experiences that adults take for granted. When young children do report dreams, the content is strikingly different from adult dreams. Early childhood dreams lack movement, narrative, and self-participation, the very features that make adult dreams feel immersive and experimental. Young children's dream reports tend to be static, like single images or tableaus rather than unfolding stories. They might report seeing an animal or a person, but not doing anything, just being there. There is little sense of events progressing over time, of one thing leading to another in narrative sequence. Crucially, young children often report dreams as if they are watching them from outside rather than experiencing them from a first-person perspective. The child as a character may be entirely absent from the dream, or if present, is viewed from a third-person vantage point rather than experienced as the self. There is minimal sense of agency, of the dreaming self making decisions or taking actions. These features contrast sharply with adult dreams, which typically include the dreamer as an active participant experiencing events from a first-person perspective, with elaborate narratives unfolding over dream time, and with a rich sense of movement through space and interaction with dream characters and environments. The stark differences between child and adult dreams indicate that dreaming in its full adult form requires neural and cognitive capacities that take years to develop, emerging gradually through childhood rather than being present from birth. The gradual increase in dream complexity across childhood appears closely tied to brain maturation, particularly the development of parietal regions involved in spatial processing, mental imagery, and self-representation. Dream complexity increases as parietal regions mature, with the brain areas responsible for constructing spatial relationships, for generating and manipulating mental images, and for maintaining a sense of embodied self in space, all showing protracted development that extends well into middle childhood and even adolescence. As these regions mature and become more interconnected with other cortical areas, children's dreams become richer and more elaborate. Movement begins to appear in dreams, with dream characters and the dreaming self moving through space rather than remaining static. Narrative structure emerges, with sequences of events related through cause and effect. The dreaming self becomes present as an active participant rather than an external observer. By late childhood and early adolescence, dreams begin to resemble adult dreams in most respects, though they may still lack some of the emotional intensity and thematic complexity that characterizes mature dreaming. The parallel between parietal lobe maturation and dream development is not coincidental. The same brain regions that support waking spatial cognition and mental imagery also appear essential for constructing the immersive spatial environments and visual experiences of dreams. Without mature parietal function, the brain cannot generate the rich simulated realities that characterize adult dreaming. Research has found that visuospatial skills strongly predict dream recall in children, more so than verbal abilities or other cognitive capacities. Children who perform well on tests of visual memory, spatial reasoning, and mental imagery tend to report dreams more frequently and to provide more detailed dream descriptions than children with weaker visuospatial skills. This relationship suggests that dreaming relies heavily on visual and spatial cognition, requiring the ability to generate, maintain, and manipulate mental images of spaces, objects, and figures. Children who struggle with these abilities during waking may also have difficulty generating vivid dream imagery or may produce dream experiences that are less memorable and reportable. The link between waking visuospatial abilities and dreaming also suggests that dreams are not a completely separate or independent mental function, but rather draw on the same cognitive resources used during waking imagination and visualization. A child who has difficulty picturing scenes or objects in their mind while awake will likely also have difficulty generating rich visual dream content during sleep. As visuospatial skills develop through childhood, improving with brain maturation and experience, dream recall and complexity improve in parallel, further evidence of the deep connections between waking cognition and sleeping consciousness. The limitations of young children's dreams mirror the limits they show in imagining transformations and understanding narrative sequences during waking thought. Preschool dreams mirror limits in imagining transformations, reflecting young children's well-documented difficulties with understanding how one state of affairs can transform into another through intermediate steps. Young children struggle with tasks that require imagining spatial transformations, such as mentally rotating objects or understanding how a shape will look from a different viewpoint. They also have difficulty understanding complex causal sequences and maintaining coherent narratives over time. These same limitations appear in their dreams. The static quality of early childhood dreams, the lack of movement and transformation, parallels the child's limited capacity for dynamic mental imagery during waking. The absence of narrative structure in early dreams parallels the child's difficulty with constructing and understanding complex stories while awake. As these cognitive abilities develop through the preschool and early school years, dreams simultaneously become more dynamic and narrative. This parallel development provides strong evidence that dreaming depends on general cognitive capacities rather than being a special or separate mental function. Dreams are essentially a form of imagination, of mental simulation, and they are constrained by the same cognitive limitations that affect waking imagination. A child who cannot yet imagine complex transformations and narratives while awake cannot generate them in dreams either. The overall pattern across development is clear. Dream structure evolves alongside brain development, with different aspects of dreaming coming online as different neural systems mature. The most basic visual content appears first, by early childhood. Movement and first-person perspective emerge in middle childhood as parietal and motor systems mature. Narrative complexity and emotional richness increase through late childhood and adolescence as frontal and limbic systems reach maturity. Even within adulthood, some aspects of dreaming may continue to develop or change with experience and learning. The dreams of a young adult may differ in content and themes from those of a middle-aged or elderly person, reflecting changing concerns, experiences, and perhaps subtle shifts in brain function. This lifelong evolution of dreaming parallels the lifelong plasticity of the brain itself, the ongoing changes in neural structure and function that continue across the entire lifespan. Dreaming is not a fixed phenomenon but a dynamic aspect of consciousness that grows and changes along with the person who experiences it. Understanding this developmental trajectory helps us appreciate that the dreams we experience as adults are the product of decades of neural and cognitive maturation, representing the culmination of a long developmental process rather than something that was always present in its current form. At the other end of the lifespan, aging alters REM architecture and recall frequency in ways that parallel the changes in brain structure and function that occur with normal aging. Older adults tend to have less total REM sleep than younger adults, with REM periods becoming shorter and less frequent. The intensity of REM sleep, as measured by the density of rapid eye movements and other physiological markers, also decreases with age. These changes likely reflect age-related alterations in the brainstem systems that generate and regulate REM sleep, systems that may become less robust with advancing years. Dream recall also tends to decline with age, with elderly individuals reporting dreams less frequently than younger adults when asked about their dream experiences. Whether this reflects actual reduction in dream activity or primarily reflects memory changes associated with aging remains somewhat unclear. Older adults show declines in many types of memory, so reduced dream recall could simply be part of a general memory decline rather than indicating reduced dreaming per se. However, the changes in REM sleep architecture suggest that the neurophysiological substrate for rich dreaming may indeed be somewhat compromised in advanced age. Additionally, the content of dreams reported by older adults sometimes differs from younger adults' dreams, with some studies finding fewer aggressive interactions, fewer sexual elements, and more mundane, everyday scenarios in elderly people's dream reports, though considerable individual variation exists. Perhaps the most dramatic evidence that dreaming depends on specific brain systems comes from neurological lesions that can selectively eliminate dreaming while leaving other aspects of sleep and cognition largely intact. Certain types of brain damage, particularly to specific regions of the parieto-occipital cortex and related areas, can cause a complete cessation of dreaming. Patients with such lesions report that they no longer dream at all, that their sleep is a complete blank, despite having normal REM sleep cycles and normal cognitive function during waking. These cases, sometimes called Charcot-Wilbrand syndrome after early descriptions of the phenomenon, provide powerful evidence that dreaming requires specific neural substrates. The lesions that eliminate dreaming typically involve regions at the junction of parietal, occipital, and temporal lobes, areas crucial for visual imagery, spatial representation, and memory integration. Damage to white matter pathways connecting these regions to frontal areas can also eliminate dreaming. Interestingly, similar lesions can also impair or eliminate voluntary mental imagery during waking, the ability to deliberately picture scenes or objects in the mind's eye, supporting the idea that dreaming and waking imagery rely on overlapping neural mechanisms. The existence of patients who have lost the ability to dream but are otherwise relatively normal demonstrates that dreaming is not an automatic byproduct of sleep but rather requires the coordinated function of specific brain networks that can be disrupted by focal damage. These lesion studies and the broader evidence from developmental research and neuroimaging all point to the conclusion that dreaming depends on distributed forebrain networks rather than on any single brain region or simple mechanism. Dreaming requires the coordinated activity of multiple cortical and subcortical systems. Visual cortices must generate imagery. Parietal regions must construct spatial relationships and self-representation. Temporal regions and the hippocampus must supply memory content. Limbic structures must provide emotional coloring. Frontal regions must maintain some minimal level of organization and coherence, though reduced compared to waking. White matter pathways must connect these regions, allowing information to flow between them. The brainstem must initiate and maintain the REM state that provides favorable neurochemical conditions. All of these components must work together to produce the rich, immersive experiences we call dreams. Damage or immaturity in any of these systems can alter or eliminate dreaming. This distributed network organization helps explain why dreaming is so vulnerable to disruption, why it requires years to develop fully, and why it shows such individual variation. It also helps explain why dreams have such varied content and quality. Different patterns of activity across these networks, different balances between regions, different strengths of connectivity, all contribute to the particular dream experiences any given person has on any given night. Dreaming emerges from the collective dynamics of these networks, a complex phenomenon that cannot be reduced to any single brain region or simple explanation, but rather represents the coordinated activity of much of the forebrain working together to create our nightly journeys through inner worlds. Dreaming is not exclusive to humans but appears to be a widespread phenomenon across the animal kingdom, present in many species and likely representing an ancient evolutionary adaptation rather than a recent innovation unique to our species. This realization has profound implications for how we understand both the biological functions of dreaming and the distribution of consciousness across different forms of life. For many years, the question of whether animals dream was purely speculative, impossible to answer definitively because we cannot ask animals about their subjective experiences. But advances in neuroscience have provided indirect evidence that strongly suggests many animals do experience something analogous to human dreaming, states of consciousness during sleep characterized by vivid sensory and motor imagery related to waking experiences. The neural signatures of dreaming, the patterns of brain activity that accompany dream experiences in humans, appear in recognizable forms across numerous species, suggesting that the basic neural mechanisms underlying dreaming evolved long ago in our evolutionary history and have been preserved across many different lineages. The presence of dreaming across such diverse species raises fascinating questions about what functions dreaming serves, what selective advantages it might confer, and what the subjective experiences of dreaming might be like for creatures with very different sensory systems and cognitive abilities than our own. Some of the most compelling evidence for dreaming in non-human animals comes from studies of rats, where researchers have found that rats replay waking experiences through hippocampal place cells during REM sleep in ways that strongly suggest they are dreaming about their spatial experiences. Place cells are neurons in the hippocampus that fire when an animal is in a specific location in its environment. Different place cells correspond to different locations, creating a kind of neural map of space. When a rat explores a maze or moves through its environment, researchers can record from these place cells and see a sequence of activations corresponding to the path the rat is taking. Remarkably, during subsequent REM sleep, these same place cells reactivate in similar sequences, as if the rat's brain is replaying the journey it took while awake. The replays occur at faster speeds than the original experience, compressed in time, but the sequential order is preserved. This replay is not random but specifically corresponds to paths the rat actually traveled, and it occurs much more frequently than would be expected by chance. The phenomenon provides powerful evidence that the rat's brain is doing something during REM sleep that involves revisiting and processing spatial memories from waking experience, which is essentially what we do when we dream about places we have been and activities we have done. The hippocampal replay in rats is not occasional but remarkably prevalent, with about half of rat REM episodes repeating specific waking patterns in ways that can be detected through neural recording. This high frequency suggests that memory replay is not an accidental byproduct but a fundamental aspect of what the sleeping rat brain does during REM periods. The replays appear to serve memory consolidation functions, helping to strengthen and integrate spatial memories, allowing the rat to better navigate its environment in the future. Rats that are prevented from experiencing normal REM sleep show impairments in spatial learning tasks, supporting the idea that the replay serves important cognitive functions. While we cannot know for certain whether rats have subjective experiences during these replay episodes, whether there is anything it is like to be a dreaming rat, the neural activity patterns are strikingly similar to what occurs in humans during spatial dreaming. When humans dream about navigating through spaces, similar hippocampal replay occurs, suggesting that the rat's replay may well be accompanied by some form of spatial imagery or experience, a rodent version of dreaming about running through mazes or exploring territories. The discovery of this replay phenomenon has been one of the most significant findings in modern neuroscience, revealing that the dreaming brain is not simply generating random activity but is actively engaged in meaningful processing of recent experiences. Anyone who has watched a sleeping dog has likely noticed the twitching legs and whiskers that often accompany the rapid eye movements of REM sleep, movements that strongly suggest the dog is dreaming and perhaps enacting dream behaviors like running or chasing. Dogs twitch legs and whiskers during REM, suggesting chase dreams or other motor activities that would be suppressed in typical REM paralysis but leak through in the form of small movements. The twitches are not random but often appear coordinated, as if the dog is running in place or pawing at something. The whiskers may vibrate rapidly as if the dog is sniffing or investigating something in its dream. Sometimes dogs vocalize during REM sleep, producing quiet barks, whimpers, or growls. All of these behaviors suggest that dogs experience dreams with sensory and motor content, perhaps reliving the day's walk, chasing squirrels in dream parks, or interacting with dream versions of their human companions or other dogs. While we cannot directly access canine consciousness to verify these interpretations, the behavioral and neural evidence strongly supports the conclusion that dogs, like humans, engage in vivid sensoromotor simulations during REM sleep. The similarity of dog REM sleep to human REM sleep, both in brain physiology and in behavioral signs, suggests that our common mammalian ancestors evolved dreaming long before the evolutionary split between carnivores and primates, making dreaming a shared heritage across most or all mammalian species. The phenomenon of REM-related neural replay and behavioral signs of dreaming extends far beyond rats and dogs. Cats, mice, and primates all show REM-related neural replays and behavioral indicators of dreaming similar to those seen in rats and dogs. Cats have been subjects of sleep research since the earliest days of REM sleep discovery, and they clearly show the same sleep cycles, the same rapid eye movements, the same muscle paralysis with occasional twitches breaking through. Classic experiments with cats in which the brainstem regions responsible for REM paralysis were lesioned showed that cats would then act out elaborate behaviors during REM sleep, stalking, pouncing, and batting at invisible prey, providing dramatic evidence of the motor content of their dreams. Mice show hippocampal replay similar to rats, allowing researchers to study dream-related neural activity in a species that is easier to work with genetically. Primates, our closest relatives, show REM sleep that is remarkably similar to human REM in all measurable respects, with complex neural patterns during sleep that suggest rich cognitive processing. Monkeys recorded during REM sleep show activation patterns in visual cortex similar to patterns seen when they view specific images while awake, suggesting they may be seeing dream imagery related to their visual experiences. The widespread presence of REM sleep and associated neural replay across mammalian species suggests this is a fundamental feature of mammalian brain function, present in the common ancestor of all modern mammals and preserved because it serves important adaptive functions. Evidence for dreamlike states extends even beyond mammals to other vertebrate classes. Zebrafish, despite being separated from mammals by hundreds of millions of years of evolution, display REM-like states with eye movements and other behavioral signs that parallel mammalian REM sleep. Zebrafish alternate between periods of quiet immobility and periods of more active sleep characterized by rapid eye movements and fin twitching. The brain activity patterns during these active sleep periods differ from waking and from quiet sleep in ways that parallel the distinctions between waking, non-REM, and REM sleep in mammals. Young zebrafish spend substantial portions of their sleep time in these active sleep states, similar to how young mammals spend disproportionate time in REM sleep, suggesting developmental functions may be similar. The discovery of REM-like sleep in fish was surprising and indicates that the basic neural mechanisms supporting this type of sleep evolved very early in vertebrate history, possibly being present in the common ancestor of all jawed vertebrates more than 400 million years ago. If zebrafish have some form of dream experience during their REM-like sleep, it would presumably be very different from mammalian dreaming given the vastly different brain organization and sensory ecology of fish. Yet the presence of similar sleep states suggests that whatever functions REM sleep and potentially dreaming serve may be so fundamental that they have been conserved across the entire vertebrate lineage. Even more surprising is evidence that invertebrates may have sleep states analogous to REM sleep. Cuttlefish, intelligent cephalopods with complex nervous systems though organized very differently from vertebrate brains, flash colors, and twitch arms during REM-like sleep in ways remarkably similar to the twitches and rapid eye movements of mammalian REM sleep. During quiet sleep, cuttlefish remain still with pale coloration. But periodically they enter an active sleep state where color patterns race across their skin. Their eyes move rapidly behind closed lids, and their arms twitch and curl as if grasping at dream prey or communicating with dream companions. These active sleep episodes are brief, lasting only a minute or two, but they recur cyclically throughout the sleep period. The color changes are particularly striking because cuttlefish use their color-changing abilities for camouflage and communication while awake, suggesting the dream state may involve these same behavioral systems. While the cuttlefish brain is structured completely differently from a mammalian brain, the functional similarities in sleep organization suggest convergent evolution, where similar sleep states evolved independently because they serve similar functions. The possibility that cuttlefish dream raises profound questions about the distribution of consciousness and subjective experience across the animal kingdom, suggesting that dreaming or something like it may be far more widespread than previously imagined, present in any creature with a sufficiently complex nervous system regardless of whether that system is built on a vertebrate or invertebrate blueprint. Evidence for REM-like sleep has even been reported in reptiles, a class that includes lizards, snakes, and turtles. Lizards show transitional REM features, sleep states that have some but not all of the characteristics of mammalian REM sleep. Some lizard species show periods during sleep with rapid eye movements and changes in brain activity that differ from quiet sleep, though the states are generally briefer and less distinct than in mammals. The intermediate or transitional nature of reptilian active sleep has been interpreted as showing that REM sleep evolved gradually, with reptiles representing an evolutionary stage before the full elaboration of REM sleep seen in mammals and birds. However, the evolutionary relationships are complex. Birds, which evolved from reptilian ancestors, show very clear REM sleep with characteristics similar to mammalian REM, suggesting that the capacity for this sleep state was present in the common ancestor of mammals and birds. Modern reptiles are not ancestral to mammals but represent separate lineages that diverged long ago, so their sleep patterns may not directly show ancestral conditions. Nonetheless, the presence of at least rudimentary REM-like states in reptiles suggests that the basic neural mechanisms existed early in vertebrate evolution and have been modified and elaborated differently in different lineages. Even more surprisingly, recent research has found evidence of sleep states with REM-like characteristics in spiders. Spiders exhibit twitching states resembling active sleep, periods during their rest when their legs curl and uncurl rhythmically and their eyes, which cannot move, nonetheless show changes in appearance suggesting altered internal states. These observations, documented through careful video recording of sleeping spiders, suggest that even arachnids with their relatively simple nervous systems may have some form of active sleep distinct from quiet rest. The twitching legs of sleeping spiders are reminiscent of the twitching paws of sleeping dogs or the twitching arms of sleeping cuttlefish, suggesting a common functional pattern where motor systems show activity during certain sleep states despite overall behavioral quiescence. If spiders have something analogous to REM sleep, it would be extraordinarily difficult to determine whether they have anything resembling subjective dream experiences, given how different their nervous systems and sensory worlds are from our own. Yet the presence of behaviorally similar sleep states across such diverse species, from humans to fish to cuttlefish to spiders, suggests that sleep is not a single uniform state but has internal structure, with active and quiet phases, and that this structure may serve fundamental biological functions important enough to be preserved or to evolve convergently across wildly different nervous systems and body plans. Taking all this evidence together, from the mammalian studies showing clear hippocampal replay to the observations of REM-like states in fish, cephalopods, and even spiders, the conclusion seems inescapable that dreaming, or at least something functionally analogous to dreaming, likely predates mammals evolutionarily and may be a very ancient feature of animal nervous systems. The core mechanisms of REM sleep and the memory replay and sensorimotor activation that characterize mammalian dreaming appear to have deep evolutionary roots, present in some form across most of the animal kingdom. This suggests that dreaming serves fundamental functions important enough that natural selection has preserved these mechanisms across hundreds of millions of years and across dramatic changes in body plan and brain organization. What those functions are remains a topic of active research and debate. Memory consolidation is clearly part of the answer, as the hippocampal replay studies demonstrate. But there may be other functions as well, perhaps related to maintaining and tuning neural circuits, processing emotional experiences, or exploring possibilities through simulation. Whatever the functions, the widespread distribution of dreaming or dreamlike states across animals of all kinds tells us that when we dream, we are engaging in something ancient and fundamental, a process that connects us not only to other humans but to mammals, birds, reptiles, fish, and perhaps even to invertebrates, all engaged in our own ways in the mysterious nightly activity of dreaming. Each species experiencing its own version of inner worlds during sleep. The amount of time different animals spend in REM sleep varies dramatically across species, revealing important clues about what REM sleep and dreaming accomplish and how these functions relate to an animal's ecology, development, and brain organization. Different species vary widely in REM sleep duration, with some animals spending just a few minutes per day in REM while others devote many hours to this distinctive sleep state. These variations are not random but show clear patterns related to factors like brain size, developmental stage, metabolic rate, and environmental pressures. Large animals with more complex brains often have different REM patterns than small animals with simpler nervous systems. Species that are born highly immature, with extensive brain development remaining after birth, tend to have more REM sleep than species born in advanced states of development. Animals that sleep in safe, protected environments can afford to spend more time in REM than animals that must remain vigilant even during rest. By comparing REM sleep across species, researchers can test hypotheses about what functions this sleep state serves, looking for correlations between REM duration and various aspects of biology and behavior. The extraordinary diversity of REM patterns across the animal kingdom provides a natural experiment, showing us how evolution has adjusted this sleep state to meet the needs of different species living in different circumstances. Among the most extreme examples of REM sleep duration is the platypus, a remarkable egg-laying mammal native to Australia that represents an ancient lineage of mammals that split off before the evolution of placental mammals and marsupials. Platypuses spend up to 6 hours per day in REM sleep, a staggering amount that represents a substantial portion of their total sleep time and stands out even among mammals, which as a group tend to have more REM sleep than other vertebrates. The reason for the platypus's exceptional REM duration is not entirely clear, though researchers have proposed several possibilities. Platypuses have unusually large brains relative to their body size, and they possess a remarkable sensory system in their bills that can detect electrical fields generated by muscle contractions in prey, allowing them to hunt underwater with their eyes and ears closed. This unique sensory system requires extensive neural processing and may necessitate substantial sleep-related neural maintenance. The platypus also represents a very early branch of the mammalian family tree, and some researchers have suggested that early mammals may have had more REM sleep than later evolving species, with the platypus preserving this ancestral pattern. Whatever the explanation, the platypus demonstrates that REM sleep can occupy a major portion of an animal's daily time budget, suggesting it must provide benefits important enough to justify the substantial investment of time and the vulnerability that comes with being deeply asleep for extended periods. In striking contrast to the platypus, another egg-laying mammal, the echidna or spiny anteater, which is the platypus's closest living relative, shows minimal REM despite long sleep times. Echidnas sleep extensively but spend almost all of that time in non-REM sleep, with REM occupying only the tiniest fraction of sleep or, in some studies, being nearly absent altogether. This is one of the most puzzling findings in comparative sleep research. How can two such closely related species, both egg-laying mammals that diverged relatively recently in evolutionary terms, have such radically different REM patterns? The platypus has more REM sleep than almost any other animal, while the echidna has less REM than almost any other mammal. Various theories have been proposed to explain this striking difference. The echidna has a lower and more variable body temperature than the platypus, and REM sleep involves temporary loss of thermoregulation, so perhaps echidnas cannot afford much REM because they need to maintain thermal control. The echidna's brain also has some unusual structural features, including a very large and extensively folded cortex for its body size, and perhaps this brain organization somehow reduces the need for REM sleep. Or perhaps echidnas accomplish during non-REM sleep what other mammals accomplish during REM, finding a different solution to similar functional problems. The echidna remains an enigma, a clear exception to most generalizations about mammalian REM sleep, reminding us that evolution can produce unexpected variations and that our understanding of why animals sleep the way they do remains incomplete. When we look across mammals more broadly, we find that rodents experience more REM sleep than primates, both in absolute time and as a percentage of total sleep. Rats and mice spend roughly 2 hours per day in REM sleep, which represents about 15 to 20% of their total sleep time. In contrast, adult humans typically spend about 90 to 120 minutes in REM, roughly 20 to 25% of sleep, though starting from less total sleep time. Other primates show similar patterns to humans. This difference between rodents and primates is particularly interesting because it contradicts what we might naively expect. Primates have more complex brains, more elaborate cognitive abilities, and more complex social lives than rodents, so we might predict they would need more REM sleep for memory consolidation and neural maintenance. The fact that rodents have more REM suggests that REM duration is not simply proportional to cognitive complexity but may relate to other factors like metabolic rate, lifespan, or developmental patterns. Rodents have much higher metabolic rates than primates of comparable size, burning through energy faster and living shorter lives. They also have different developmental trajectories, being born less mature and undergoing substantial brain development after birth. These factors may contribute to their higher REM requirements. One of the most consistent patterns across species is that REM duration correlates with neural development needs, particularly the amount of brain growth and reorganization that remains to be accomplished after birth. Across mammals, species born in immature states with substantial brain development still ahead of them tend to have more REM sleep than species born in advanced developmental states. Human infants spend about 50% of their sleep time in REM, far more than adults, and this percentage gradually decreases as the brain matures through childhood and adolescence. Similarly, rat pups have more REM than adult rats, and kittens more than adult cats. This correlation suggests that REM sleep plays important roles in neural development, perhaps helping to organize developing neural circuits, prune unnecessary connections, or consolidate learning during the critical periods when the young brain is rapidly acquiring skills and knowledge. The high REM requirement of developing brains supports theories that REM sleep is involved in synaptic plasticity, in modifying the strength and pattern of connections between neurons. Young brains are highly plastic, constantly changing in response to experience, and may require extensive REM sleep to support this plasticity. As the brain matures and becomes more stable, with its basic architecture established, the need for REM decreases, reflected in the decline in REM percentage from infancy through adulthood. Environmental factors also influence how much REM sleep animals obtain, with safe sleeping environments allowing longer REM phases while exposure to predation risk or other dangers tends to reduce REM duration. Animals that sleep in protected burrows, nests, or social groups where some individuals remain alert can afford to spend more time in the vulnerable state of REM sleep. Animals that must sleep exposed to potential threats tend to have shorter REM episodes that can be interrupted quickly if danger approaches. Marine mammals provide dramatic examples of how environmental constraints shape REM patterns. Many cetaceans, including dolphins and some whales, have remarkably little REM sleep, possibly because they must maintain some level of consciousness even during sleep to breathe and to avoid predators. They sleep with one brain hemisphere at a time, keeping the other hemisphere partially awake, and this unihemispheric sleep appears incompatible with the bilateral activation pattern of typical REM sleep. Fur seals show an interesting intermediate pattern, having substantial REM sleep when sleeping on land but almost none when sleeping at sea, where they cannot afford the complete muscle paralysis and reduced vigilance of REM. These examples show that animals balance the benefits of REM sleep against the risks it imposes, adjusting their sleep patterns to match their ecological circumstances. The fact that animals sacrifice REM sleep when it is dangerous suggests it is not absolutely essential for survival, at least in the short term, though the long-term consequences of chronic REM deprivation may be severe. One of the most telling pieces of evidence for the importance of REM sleep comes from deprivation studies showing that REM deprivation triggers a rebound with intensified dreaming when animals are finally allowed to sleep normally again. If animals or humans are repeatedly awakened whenever they enter REM sleep, preventing them from completing normal REM episodes but allowing non-REM sleep to continue, several things happen. First, the brain begins to try to enter REM more frequently, as if compensating for the deficit. As REM deprivation continues, attempts to enter REM occur more and more often, requiring more frequent awakenings to prevent it. When the deprivation finally ends and the subject is allowed to sleep undisturbed, there is a dramatic REM rebound, with the amount of REM sleep substantially exceeding normal levels for several nights afterward, as if the brain is urgently making up for lost REM time. The dreams during this rebound period are often reported as unusually vivid and intense, as if the dreaming process is occurring at higher intensity to compensate for the accumulated deficit. The rebound effect demonstrates that the brain tracks REM sleep and actively defends some minimum amount of it, treating REM deprivation as a deficit that must be corrected. This regulatory behavior suggests REM sleep serves functions important enough that the brain has evolved specific mechanisms to ensure adequate amounts are obtained. The existence of REM rebound and the brain's clear effort to defend its REM sleep strongly suggests REM serves essential biological functions that cannot be indefinitely postponed or eliminated without consequences. If REM sleep were merely an accident, a meaningless byproduct of neural activity with no functional significance, there would be no reason for the brain to regulate it so carefully or to show compensatory increases after deprivation. The fact that REM is regulated, that the brain notices when it is missing and actively tries to make up for deficits, indicates it accomplishes something important, something the nervous system requires for optimal function. What exactly those essential functions are remains a topic of research and debate, with memory consolidation, emotional regulation, neural development, and synaptic maintenance all proposed as key roles. Likely REM sleep serves multiple functions simultaneously, with different aspects being more or less important depending on species, developmental stage, and individual circumstances. The universality of REM sleep across mammals and its presence in birds and possibly in other vertebrate groups suggests these functions are fundamental to vertebrate brain operation, so important that evolution has preserved this sleep state over hundreds of millions of years despite the costs and risks it imposes. The brain fiercely protects REM sleep, defending it against disruption and mounting increasingly aggressive attempts to enter this state when it is being prevented. This protective behavior is evident not only in laboratory deprivation studies but also in clinical contexts where certain medications, substances, or disorders suppress REM sleep. Alcohol, for instance, suppresses REM sleep during the hours when it is actively present in the brain. But as alcohol is metabolized and cleared, REM sleep rebounds with unusual intensity, often producing vivid or disturbing dreams in the early morning hours. Many antidepressant medications suppress REM sleep substantially, yet patients taking these medications chronically do not seem to suffer catastrophic consequences, suggesting the brain may compensate through mechanisms we do not yet fully understand, perhaps accomplishing REM-related functions through altered non-REM sleep or through the small amount of REM that persists even under suppression. When REM-suppressing medications are suddenly discontinued, intense REM rebound occurs, sometimes with nightmares and disturbed sleep, as the brain rushes to restore normal REM amounts. The lengths to which the brain will go to obtain its required REM sleep, the regulatory systems devoted to monitoring and maintaining it, all point to this being a fundamental necessity rather than an optional luxury or meaningless accident. Taking all this evidence together, from the careful regulation and defense of REM sleep to its widespread distribution across species to its role in development and its rebound after deprivation, we are led to an inescapable conclusion. Dreaming is not accidental noise, not a meaningless byproduct of random neural activity, but rather reflects important functional processes carried out by the sleeping brain. The subjective experiences we call dreams, the vivid imagery and narrative content, may be a side effect of these functional processes rather than the function itself, much as the sound of a running engine is a side effect of combustion rather than the engine's purpose. But the underlying neural activity that generates dreams, the activation of memory systems, the replay of experiences, the consolidation of learning, the processing of emotions, all of this appears to serve real purposes, to accomplish cognitive and neural maintenance work that is important enough to be worth the substantial time investment and the vulnerability that deep sleep entails. Dreams are the subjective experience of this work in progress, a window into the brain's nighttime maintenance routines. The fact that humans and other animals spend so much of our lives engaged in this process, that evolution has crafted elaborate neural mechanisms to ensure it happens, that the brain defends it so vigorously against disruption. All of this tells us that whatever is happening during REM sleep and dreaming is not an accident but an essential feature of how complex nervous systems maintain and improve themselves across the daily cycle of sleeping and waking. Over the decades since scientists first began seriously studying sleep and dreams, several theories have been proposed to explain why dreams exist, what functions they might serve, and why evolution has preserved this curious state of consciousness across so many species and so much evolutionary time. These theories differ substantially in their assumptions and predictions, ranging from views that see dreams as essentially meaningless noise to theories that attribute elaborate adaptive functions to dreaming. The diversity of theoretical perspectives reflects both the complexity of the phenomenon and the difficulty of testing hypotheses about subjective experiences that occur during sleep when direct communication is impossible. Each theory captures some aspects of dreaming while potentially missing or downplaying others. The challenge for researchers is to determine which theories best account for the full range of evidence from neuroscience, psychology, evolutionary biology, and comparative studies across species. Understanding why we dream requires integrating insights from all these domains, recognizing that the answer may not be simple or singular but may involve multiple functions operating simultaneously or at different times across development and across the sleep cycle. As we explore these different theoretical frameworks, we can appreciate both how far our understanding has progressed and how much mystery still surrounds this fundamental aspect of human and animal experience. One of the earliest and most influential modern theories of dreaming is the activation synthesis theory, proposed in the 1970s and subsequently refined over several decades. This theory views dreams as the cortex interpreting random signals generated by the brainstem during REM sleep, attempting to make sense of chaotic neural activity by weaving it into something resembling a coherent narrative. According to this view, the paunch generates essentially random activation that spreads throughout the brain during REM sleep. This activation stimulates various cortical regions in haphazard patterns, lighting up visual areas here, memory systems there, emotional centers somewhere else, all without any meaningful organization. The cortex, faced with this barrage of internally generated signals and doing what it does best, which is finding patterns and constructing interpretations, tries to synthesize these random inputs into something coherent, creating the bizarre narratives and impossible scenarios of dreams. The theory elegantly explains several features of dreams: their often illogical and fragmentary quality, their strange juxtapositions of people and places, their sudden scene changes and impossible events. If dreams are the brain's attempt to make sense of noise, then their strange qualities simply reflect the impossibility of constructing fully coherent narratives from fundamentally incoherent inputs. The activation synthesis theory has been influential in emphasizing the role of brainstem activation in triggering REM sleep and in highlighting how dreams differ from waking thought. However, the theory has been criticized for underestimating the meaningfulness of dream content and for not adequately explaining the apparent emotional and memory-related functions of dreaming that have been documented in more recent research. A very different perspective is offered by threat simulation theory, which suggests dreams serve an important adaptive function by rehearsing danger scenarios and allowing us to practice responses to threats in a safe environment. According to this evolutionary perspective, dreams are not random or meaningless but are specifically biased towards simulating threatening situations, predatory encounters, social conflicts, and other dangers that would have been frequent in our evolutionary past. By repeatedly experiencing and responding to threats in dreams, we supposedly become better prepared to handle real threats during waking life, developing and maintaining the perceptual and motor skills needed for survival. The theory points to the prevalence of negative emotions and threatening scenarios in dreams as evidence for this function. Dreams often involve being chased, being attacked, facing dangerous animals, falling from heights, or encountering hostile people, scenarios that would have posed genuine survival challenges for our ancestors. The theory also notes that children have more nightmares and threatening dreams than adults, which makes sense if dreams serve to train threat response systems during development when such training would be most needed. Threat simulation theory has intuitive appeal and connects dreaming to clearly adaptive functions related to survival. However, critics argue that many dreams do not involve threats at all, that modern humans dream about many concerns that have no clear connection to ancestral survival challenges, and that the theory does not easily account for the full range of dream content, including mundane, pleasant, or purely bizarre dreams that seem to serve no obvious threat simulation purpose. A more recent proposal, the overfitted brain theory, offers yet another perspective on dream function. His theory proposes that dreams prevent neural rigidity by introducing variability and noise into neural networks, preventing them from becoming too narrowly tuned or overfitted to recent experiences. The concept of overfitting comes from machine learning, where a network that is trained too extensively on a specific dataset may learn that dataset too well, memorizing its peculiarities and noise rather than extracting generalizable patterns, resulting in poor performance when faced with new data. The brain faces a similar challenge. During waking, neural networks are constantly being updated and modified by experience, with synaptic connections being strengthened or weakened based on what we encounter and learn. Without some mechanism to maintain generalizability and flexibility, these networks might become too specifically tuned to recent experiences, losing their ability to respond appropriately to novel situations. According to overfitted brain theory, dreams serve this protective function by introducing structured noise into neural networks during sleep, activating memories and representations in unusual combinations that prevent the system from becoming too rigid or specialized. The bizarre, illogical quality of dreams, rather than being a bug or meaningless side effect, is actually the feature that makes dreams functionally valuable, ensuring that neural networks maintain appropriate levels of variability and flexibility. This theory is relatively new and remains speculative, but it offers an interesting framework for understanding why dreams are strange and how that strangeness might serve computational purposes related to maintaining optimal brain function. Related to threat simulation theory, but somewhat broader in scope, is the idea that dreams may act as a virtual reality training system, allowing us to practice not just threat responses but a wide range of skills and scenarios in a safe, simulated environment. According to this view, the dreaming brain creates immersive simulations where we can experience and respond to diverse situations, learning from these experiences without facing real-world consequences. We can practice social interactions, explore environments, attempt difficult tasks, experience different emotional situations, all within the dream simulation. The learning that occurs in dreams might then transfer to waking life, improving our skills and preparing us for challenges we have not yet encountered. This theory is supported by evidence that motor imagery and mental practice during waking can improve actual physical performance, suggesting that simulated experiences have real effects on skill development. If dreams provide a similar kind of mental practice, they could contribute to skill acquisition and maintenance. The theory also fits with evidence that REM sleep is important for certain types of learning, particularly procedural learning of motor skills and perceptual learning. Athletes and musicians who practice skills during the day show improved performance after sleep, with REM sleep seeming to play a role in consolidating these improvements. Perhaps the dream experiences during REM sleep, the simulated movements and sensory experiences, contribute to this consolidation by providing additional practice opportunities. The virtual reality training theory has the advantage of being broad enough to encompass many different aspects of dream content while still attributing clear functional significance to dreaming. Another theoretical framework, called proto-consciousness theory, takes a developmental perspective and sees dreams as a kind of preparation for waking awareness, a way for the brain to maintain and test its basic conscious capacities. According to this view, consciousness is not something that simply happens automatically when we are awake, but requires certain neural systems to be properly maintained and calibrated. During sleep, when external input is reduced or absent, these systems might deteriorate or drift out of calibration if nothing were done to maintain them. Dreams, according to proto-consciousness theory, serve to keep consciousness-generating systems active and properly tuned even during sleep. By generating internal sensory experiences, emotional states, and self-awareness during dreams, the brain maintains the machinery of consciousness, ensuring it will be ready to function properly when we wake. This theory particularly emphasizes the role of REM sleep and dreaming in development, suggesting that the extensive REM sleep of infants and children serves to build and refine the neural systems that support consciousness itself. As we discussed earlier, dreaming emerges gradually during childhood as the neural substrate matures, which fits with the idea that dreams reflect the development and maintenance of consciousness-generating neural networks. The theory is ambitious in linking dreaming to fundamental questions about consciousness, but it faces challenges in clearly specifying what it means to maintain or prepare for consciousness and in generating testable predictions that distinguish it from other theories. Taking a more deflationary approach, some scientists argue that dreams are simply byproducts of memory processing, that the subjective experiences we have during dreams are epiphenomenal side effects of the real work being done during sleep, which is consolidation and reorganization of memories. According to this byproduct view, the neural activity during REM sleep serves important functions related to transferring memories from temporary to permanent storage, strengthening important memories while allowing unimportant ones to fade, integrating new information with existing knowledge, and so forth. Dreams are what it feels like from the inside when these memory processes are happening, but the dream experiences themselves do not serve any function and do not contribute to the memory work. The dream is like the sound a machine makes while running, a perceivable consequence of the machine's operation but not itself doing any work or serving any purpose. This view is appealing in its parsimony, requiring no elaborate explanations of dream function beyond the already well-supported role of sleep in memory consolidation. However, it faces the challenge of explaining why dreams have such consistent features, why they have narrative structure and emotional coherence rather than being completely random or fragmented experiences. If dreams are mere byproducts, why do they have the qualities they have? Why do they feel meaningful and engaging rather than being obviously random noise? The byproduct view may underestimate the functional significance of the dream experience itself. In contrast to the byproduct view, other researchers argue that dream experiences themselves serve adaptive roles, that the conscious, subjective aspect of dreaming is not incidental but functionally important. According to this perspective, it matters what we dream about and how we experience dreams, not just that certain neural processes are occurring during sleep. The content of dreams, the narratives we construct, the emotions we feel, the scenarios we encounter, all of these experimental qualities contribute to learning, emotional regulation, problem-solving, and other adaptive outcomes. For example, dreaming about emotional experiences from waking life, re-experiencing and working through difficult feelings in dream scenarios may help us process and integrate those emotions in ways that reduce their power to disturb us during waking hours. Dreaming about problems we are trying to solve may allow us to consider those problems from new angles, leading to insights that would not occur during waking thought. The subjective experience of dreaming, the conscious simulation of scenarios and exploration of possibilities, adds something beyond what would be accomplished by unconscious neural processing alone. This view takes dreams seriously as mental experiences that matter for their own sake, not just as indicators of underlying neural activity. It suggests that evolution has shaped not just the neural mechanisms of REM sleep but also the phenomenology of dreams, the qualities of dream experience, to serve adaptive functions. This perspective is harder to test definitively than simpler byproduct views, but it resonates with many people's intuitions about dreams and with clinical observations suggesting that dream content can reflect and influence psychological well-being. As researchers have gathered more evidence and tested predictions from different theories, it has become increasingly clear that evidence supports multiple overlapping functions for dreaming and that no single theory captures the full story. Memory consolidation clearly occurs during sleep and involves some of the same neural systems active during dreaming, supporting theories that emphasize memory processing. The prevalence of emotional content in dreams and the role of limbic system activation during REM support theories emphasizing emotional regulation and processing. The presence of threat-related content in many dreams, particularly in children, lends some support to threat simulation theory. The bizarre, generative quality of dreams might serve the kind of variability-maintaining function proposed by overfitted brain theory. The relationship between dreaming and brain development supports proto-consciousness and developmental theories. Rather than being mutually exclusive alternatives, these different theoretical perspectives may each capture part of what dreaming accomplishes. Different functions may be more or less important at different life stages, in different species, or in different individual dreams. The multifunctionality of dreaming would not be surprising given how much time evolution has had to shape this phenomenon and how central sleep is to the lives of most animals. Evolution tends to co-opt existing mechanisms for new functions over time, So a process that initially served one purpose might have acquired additional functions as it was elaborated and refined across millions of years. This brings us to a perhaps unsatisfying but likely accurate conclusion. Dreaming likely serves no single purpose but rather accomplishes multiple functions simultaneously or at different times. Just as waking consciousness serves many purposes, allowing us to perceive, remember, plan, feel, communicate, and much more, all through the same basic neural machinery, so too might dreaming serve multiple functions through the same basic process of internally generated consciousness during sleep. The specific functions emphasized in a particular dream might depend on what the individual brain needs at that moment, what recent experiences need processing, what skills need practice, what emotions need regulation, what neural networks need maintenance. Some dreams might primarily consolidate memories. Others might primarily regulate emotions. Still others might primarily maintain neural flexibility or rehearse responses to challenges. And many dreams probably accomplish several of these functions at once in ways that are difficult to fully disentangle. The multiplicity of dream functions would help explain why dreaming is so ubiquitous and so carefully protected by the brain. If dreams served only a single, narrow purpose, we might expect to see more species that had lost this function or that accomplished it through alternative means. But if dreams serve many purposes simultaneously, bundling multiple adaptive functions into a single nightly process, then they become much harder to eliminate or replace through evolution, explaining their persistence across such a wide range of species and such vast stretches of evolutionary time. Our nightly journeys through dream worlds, strange and ephemeral as they are, emerge from some of the most ancient and fundamental processes in the nervous system, processes so important that they have been preserved and elaborated across the entire history of vertebrate evolution and perhaps beyond, serving multiple essential functions that keep our brains healthy, flexible, and prepared for the challenges of waking life. The study of dreams has been transformed in recent decades by technological advances that would have seemed like science fiction just a generation ago. Modern neuroscience can now detect dreams in real time, moving beyond the need to wake people up and ask them what they were experiencing to instead monitoring neural activity continuously and inferring moment by moment whether someone is dreaming and even what they might be dreaming about. This capability represents a profound shift in how dream research can be conducted. For most of the history of dream science, researchers were limited to retrospective reports, waking subjects from sleep and relying on their memories of dreams that had just ended. This approach has inherent limitations. Memories of dreams fade rapidly, as we have discussed. Not all dreams are remembered even when someone is awakened directly from REM sleep. The act of waking and verbalizing a dream may change or contaminate the memory. Language may be inadequate to capture the full experiential quality of dreams. But with modern brain recording and analysis techniques, researchers can now observe the sleeping brain continuously, tracking patterns of activity that correlate with dreaming states and dream content without interrupting sleep or relying solely on verbal reports. This allows for much more systematic and comprehensive study of when dreams occur, how they change across the night, and how they relate to ongoing neural processes. One of the key advances enabling real-time dream detection has been the development of AI classifiers that can predict dream presence from brain waves with remarkable accuracy. Using machine learning algorithms trained on large datasets of EEG recordings paired with dream reports, researchers have built systems that can analyze the patterns of electrical activity in a sleeping person's brain and predict whether they are currently dreaming. The classifiers learn to recognize the complex patterns of brain activity, the particular combinations of frequencies, amplitudes, and coherence across different brain regions that distinguish dreaming from non-dreaming sleep. These patterns are subtle and multivariate, involving many features simultaneously in ways that would be impossible for human observers to track, but machine learning algorithms excel at finding such complex patterns in high-dimensional data. When tested on new subjects not included in the training data, these AI classifiers can predict dream presence with accuracy well above chance, often correctly identifying 70 to 80% or more of both dreaming and non-dreaming periods. The success of these classifiers demonstrates that dreaming is associated with reliable, objective changes in brain activity that can be detected from scalp recordings, validating the subjective reports that people have been giving for decades. It also opens up new possibilities for dream research, allowing scientists to track dreams throughout entire nights without constantly waking subjects, and potentially even to trigger interventions or ask questions at specific moments when dreams are occurring. Going beyond simply detecting whether someone is dreaming, researchers have begun using neural decoding to identify specific dream imagery patterns, determining what kinds of content might be present in a dream based on brain activity. This approach builds on research showing that different categories of visual content, such as faces, places, objects, and so forth, produce distinguishable patterns of activity in visual cortex and related brain regions during waking perception. If similar patterns occur during dreaming when people are generating imagery internally, then it should be possible to decode dream content by analyzing these patterns. Early studies along these lines have shown promising results. Researchers have trained decoding algorithms on brain activity recorded while people view various images during waking, teaching the algorithms to recognize the neural signatures of different visual categories. Then, during sleep, the algorithms analyze ongoing brain activity and predict what categories of content might be present in the current dream. When subjects are awakened and asked about their dreams, the predictions show above-chance accuracy, correctly identifying whether faces, buildings, food items, or other categories were present in the dream. The accuracy is far from perfect, and the technique currently works only at a coarse level, identifying broad categories rather than specific details. You cannot yet read someone's dreams in detail from their brain activity. But the fact that any decoding is possible at all is remarkable and suggests that with improved recording techniques and more sophisticated algorithms, future systems may achieve much more detailed dream reading. The success of these neural decoding efforts has been enabled in part by large dream databases that researchers have compiled over years of work, databases that link dream content to waking life experiences, brain activity patterns, and various individual differences. These databases contain thousands of dream reports collected under standardized conditions, often with accompanying brain recordings, information about the subject's activities and experiences in the days before the dream, and measures of personality, cognitive abilities, and other individual characteristics. By analyzing these large datasets, researchers can identify systematic relationships between dream content and various factors, testing hypotheses about dream function and generation. For example, researchers have used these databases to quantify how often specific waking experiences appear in dreams, finding that elements from the previous day appear frequently, but that there is also incorporation of events from several days earlier, creating the so-called dream lag effect, where experiences are more likely to appear in dreams after a delay of about a week than in the days immediately following. Large databases also allow researchers to examine individual differences, finding that some people consistently have more vivid dreams, or more negative dreams, or more bizarre dreams than others, and that these differences correlate with measurable psychological and neurobiological variables. The construction of large, systematically collected dream databases represents an important maturation of dream science, moving from anecdotal collections of interesting dreams to quantitative analyses of thousands of reports that can support rigorous statistical testing of theories. Recent research has also revealed fascinating details about the transition between sleeping and waking, showing that brain-wide waves sweep sequentially during awakening, bringing different brain regions back online in a specific order as consciousness is restored. Rather than the brain waking up all at once, different regions emerge from sleep at different times, with sensory cortices typically coming online before frontal regions involved in executive function and self-awareness. These awakening waves can be tracked using high-density brain recording techniques, showing patterns of activity that propagate across the cortex over the course of seconds to minutes as a person transitions from deep sleep to full wakefulness. The sequential nature of awakening helps explain some curious phenomena such as sleep inertia, the grogginess, and impaired cognitive function that often persists for several minutes after waking, which likely reflects the fact that some brain regions, particularly frontal areas, are still not fully online. The awakening waves also have implications for dream recall. If someone wakes gradually, allowing these waves to proceed in their natural sequence, there may be more opportunity to maintain and encode dream memories as consciousness returns. But if someone is jolted awake by a loud alarm, forcing a rapid awakening, the sequential process may be disrupted in ways that interfere with dream recall, as we discussed earlier. Understanding the dynamics of awakening at a neural level provides insights into the nature of consciousness itself, showing that being awake or asleep is not a binary state but involves complex patterns of regional activation that can be in many different configurations. One of the surprising findings from recent dream research is that dreaming can persist even without REM sleep under certain conditions, challenging the traditional equation of REM sleep with dreaming. As we discussed earlier, dreams do occur during non-REM sleep, though with different characteristics than REM dreams. But beyond this, researchers have found that in certain neurological conditions or after certain brain injuries, people report rich, vivid dreams despite having no detectable REM sleep. Some patients with damage to the brainstem mechanisms that generate REM sleep continue to report dream experiences, suggesting that the forebrain can generate dreamlike consciousness even without the characteristic neurochemical and physiological state of REM. Similarly, some medications that strongly suppress REM sleep do not eliminate dream reports, with patients continuing to describe dream experiences even when objective measures show minimal REM sleep is occurring. These findings indicate that while REM sleep provides optimal conditions for dreaming and is associated with the most vivid and memorable dreams under normal circumstances, the capacity to generate internal experimental simulations is not absolutely dependent on REM but can occur under other conditions as well. This makes sense given that the forebrain systems that construct dream experiences, visual cortex, memory systems, emotional centers, are not fundamentally dependent on the brainstem signals that characterize REM sleep but can be activated through other means. This leads to the realization that forebrain structures can generate dreams independently of the specific REM sleep state, as long as they receive sufficient activation and are released from sensory constraints. The key ingredients for dreaming appear to be cortical activation, reduced sensory input, and some source of content from memory and emotion systems. These conditions can occur during REM sleep, where brainstem activation wakes up the cortex while the body remains paralyzed and sensory gates are closed. But similar conditions can potentially occur in other contexts as well. Deep meditation, certain drug states, hypnagogic hallucinations during sleep onset, and even some forms of spontaneous mind-wandering during waking might engage similar neural mechanisms to those involved in dreaming, producing internally generated experimental simulations that share features with dreams. The commonality across all these states is that the forebrain is generating content from internal sources rather than simply processing external sensory input. Viewed this way, dreaming is not a unique or isolated phenomenon but one end of a spectrum of internally directed conscious states that the human brain can produce. REM sleep is the primary context in which this occurs naturally and regularly, but the underlying capacity of the forebrain to generate rich internal experiences exists more broadly and can be engaged under various circumstances. The advancing capabilities of neuroscience have opened up possibilities for intervention and manipulation that were previously impossible. Researchers have found that targeted stimulation can shape dream content, allowing them to influence what people dream about by delivering specific cues during sleep. One approach involves presenting sounds or odors during REM sleep, stimuli that are subtle enough not to wake the sleeper but strong enough to be processed by the sleeping brain. These cues can then be incorporated into ongoing dreams, with subjects reporting dream content related to the presented stimuli. For example, playing a particular sound or piece of music during REM sleep makes it more likely that the person will later report dreams involving that sound or associated memories. A more sophisticated approach involves using stimuli that were previously associated with specific memories or learning during waking. Subjects learn something or have an experience while being exposed to a particular cue, such as a distinctive smell or sound. Then, presenting that cue during subsequent sleep can reactivate the associated memory, potentially influencing dream content to include that memory and perhaps enhancing consolidation of what was learned. This technique, sometimes called targeted memory reactivation, has shown promise for enhancing memory retention and has provided insights into how memory replay during sleep relates to dream content. The ability to shape dreams through external intervention opens up potential therapeutic applications, perhaps allowing clinicians to influence nightmare content or to enhance beneficial forms of dream processing. Taken together, these various advances, from AI detection of dreams to neural decoding to targeted manipulation, demonstrate that dream science is rapidly advancing after decades of relatively slow progress. The combination of improved recording technologies, more sophisticated computational analysis methods, larger databases, and better understanding of sleep neurobiology has created a kind of perfect storm of progress in the field. Questions that seemed intractable or purely philosophical just 20 years ago are now being addressed empirically with quantitative methods. The subjective, private world of dreams is becoming increasingly accessible to objective scientific investigation. This does not mean that all mysteries of dreaming have been solved. Far from it. But the trajectory is clear. The tools and approaches now exist to make systematic progress on understanding when we dream, how dreams are generated, what they represent, and what functions they serve. The coming decades will likely see continued rapid advances, potentially including the development of technologies that allow people to record and share dreams, devices that help induce lucid dreaming on demand, therapies that use dream manipulation to treat nightmares or phobias, and perhaps even brain-computer interfaces that allow communication during dreams or real-time guidance of dream content for various purposes. The ethical implications of such technologies will need careful consideration, but the scientific potential is extraordinary. In many ways, the sleeping brain represents one of neuroscience's final frontiers, a domain of brain function that has remained relatively mysterious compared to the significant progress in understanding waking perception, cognition, and behavior. For decades, neuroscientists focused primarily on understanding how the brain processes sensory information, produces motor outputs, forms memories, makes decisions, and generates language during waking states. These topics remain important and incompletely understood, but substantial progress has been made. The sleeping brain, in contrast, received less attention for many years, partly because it seemed less important for practical applications and partly because of technical difficulties in studying consciousness during sleep when communication with subjects is impossible or highly limited. But as the field has matured and the remaining mysteries of waking brain function have proven increasingly difficult to crack, attention has turned more toward understanding the sleeping brain as one of the last major domains where fundamental questions remain largely unanswered. What is the brain doing during the third of our lives we spend asleep? How do the various stages of sleep support different functions? What is the relationship between the neural activity patterns of sleep and the subjective experiences of dreams? How does sleep change and maintain neural circuits? These questions are finally becoming tractable through modern methods, and their answers promise to provide insights not only into sleep and dreams themselves but also into fundamental principles of brain organization, consciousness, and neural computation that apply across all brain states, sleeping and waking alike. The study of dreams and sleep also provides unique opportunities to understand consciousness from a different angle than waking studies allow. During waking, consciousness is always tied to external perception and action, making it difficult to separate what consciousness is fundamentally from what it does in the context of guiding adaptive behavior in the world. But during dreams, consciousness continues without external input or output, allowing researchers to study the intrinsic properties of conscious experience separate from its role in perception and action. Dreams show us what consciousness looks like when it is freed from the constraints of external reality, when the brain generates experiences purely from internal sources. Studying this form of consciousness complements and enriches our understanding of waking consciousness, revealing which aspects of experience depend on sensory input and which are generated internally, which require executive control and which can occur spontaneously, which are bound to reality and which can be fantastical. The sleeping, dreaming brain is indeed a frontier, perhaps the last great frontier, where fundamental mysteries about consciousness, memory, learning, and neural function await discovery. As we rest each night, our brains embark on their own journeys of exploration and maintenance, and through modern science we are finally beginning to understand these journeys, to map this inner territory that we all visit nightly but rarely remember clearly, to decode the final frontier that lies not in outer space but within the sleeping brain. Dreams reveal a brain that never truly rests, that remains active and engaged even when the body lies motionless and the external world recedes from awareness. The old notion of sleep as a time when the brain simply shuts down, going dark and dormant until morning, has been thoroughly overturned by modern neuroscience. The brain during sleep is not idle but intensely busy, cycling through different states of activity, processing information, consolidating memories, regulating emotions, maintaining neural circuits, and generating the rich internal experiences we call dreams. In some ways, the sleeping brain works as hard as the waking brain, burning nearly as much energy, coordinating activity across billions of neurons, engaging in complex computations and transformations of information. The difference is not in the level of activity but in its focus and purpose. The waking brain directs its efforts outward, toward perceiving and acting in the external world, while the sleeping brain turns inward, toward internal maintenance and processing. But both states involve a brain that is fundamentally active, dynamic, and engaged in essential work. This recognition has profound implications for how we think about sleep and its importance. Sleep is not wasted time or lost consciousness but rather a different mode of operation, equally vital to health and function as waking activity. The brain needs both modes, both the outward-focused work of waking and the inward-focused work of sleep, to maintain optimal performance across the full spectrum of cognitive and emotional functions that make us who we are. Sleep transforms not just the brain's activity patterns but the very nature of perception, memory, emotion, and identity, altering these fundamental aspects of mental life in ways that distinguish sleep consciousness from waking consciousness. During waking, perception is anchored to sensory input from the external world, constantly updated by information flowing in through eyes, ears, and other sense organs. But during sleep and dreaming, perception becomes disconnected from external input, generated entirely from internal sources yet feeling just as real and immediate as waking perception. Memory during waking operates under constraints of accuracy and retrieval, but during dreaming, memories become fluid and transformable, blending together in ways that would be impossible during waking, creating hybrid scenes and characters that never existed. Emotion during waking is modulated and controlled by prefrontal systems that allow us to regulate our feelings and maintain appropriate social behavior, but during dreaming, emotions can be more intense and less constrained, flooding consciousness without the usual regulatory controls. Even identity, our sense of who we are, can become fluid in dreams, with the dreaming self sometimes being the familiar waking self and sometimes being transformed into someone or something else, or even being absent entirely as we observe dream events from outside. These transformations show that the fundamental building blocks of conscious experience, perception, memory, emotion, and self are not fixed properties but depend on the current configuration of brain activity. During sleep, different configurations produce different forms of consciousness, revealing the remarkable flexibility and range of experiences the brain can generate. One of the most striking features of dreams is how they dissolve the usual constraints of time, logic, and physical law that govern waking experience. In dreams, time can flow forward or backward, can compress or expand, can loop or branch in ways that make no sense from a waking perspective. We can experience entire lifetimes in a single dream or find that what seemed like hours of dream time corresponded to just minutes of actual sleep. Events can occur simultaneously that should be sequential, or causes can follow their effects in violation of normal causality. Logic dissolves as well, with dream narratives following associative and emotional connections rather than rational cause and effect. We accept contradictions without question, simultaneously knowing incompatible things to be true or witnessing transformations that should be impossible. Physical laws become suggestions rather than constraints, as we fly without wings, breathe underwater, pass through solid walls, or witness objects and beings that defy the rules of physics, chemistry, and biology. This dissolution of normal constraints is not experienced as chaotic or disturbing within the dream itself, however. The dream creates its own internal logic, its own set of rules and expectations that feel natural and normal within the dream context even though they violate waking reality. Only upon waking do we recognize how impossible and bizarre our dream experiences were. This shows that our sense of what is possible and normal, what makes sense and what does not, is not fixed but depends on the current state of consciousness and the activity patterns in brain regions responsible for reality testing and logical evaluation. The dreaming brain demonstrates a remarkable creative capacity as it creates entire worlds from silence and darkness, generating rich, complex, multimodal experiences without any external input to guide or constrain the process. We lie in dark, quiet rooms with our eyes closed and our bodies still, receiving minimal sensory information from the environment, yet we experience vivid visual scenes, hear voices and sounds, feel textures and temperatures, move through spaces, interact with characters, all created entirely from within. The brain draws on its vast stores of memory, on patterns learned through years of experience, on emotional states and current concerns, and from these raw materials it constructs dream worlds that can feel as real and detailed as waking reality. Faces appear with specific features, places have particular layouts and atmospheres, objects have textures and colors and behaviors. The construction is not deliberate or conscious but happens spontaneously, emerging from the autonomous activity of neural networks operating outside voluntary control. This creative capacity reveals something profound about how the brain represents reality. All of our experiences, waking and sleeping, are constructed by the brain. During waking, the construction is tightly constrained by sensory input, kept aligned with external reality through constant feedback. During dreaming, these constraints are lifted, and we see what the brain can create on its own, the full range of its generative and synthetic powers unleashed. The worlds we inhabit in dreams are testament to the brain's extraordinary ability to model reality, to simulate environments and events and beings, an ability that serves us during waking as we perceive and predict and plan, but that we see in its purest form during dreams. The content of these dream worlds emerges from a unique synthesis as dreams blend memory, emotion, and imagination into experiences that are simultaneously familiar and strange, grounded in past experience yet novel in their combinations and arrangements. Every element in a dream comes from somewhere in our history. The faces are faces we have seen, even if we cannot remember whose. The places are constructed from places we have been or images we have viewed. The emotions are ones we have felt before in various contexts. Yet dreams recombine these elements in new ways, creating scenes and scenarios we have never actually experienced, juxtaposing people and places that have never been together in reality, constructing narratives that express emotional truths while violating factual accuracy. This blending is not random but follows psychological and emotional logic. Dreams bring together elements that are thematically or emotionally related even if they are unrelated in space, time, or category. A current worry might be represented through a childhood scene. Different people might be fused into hybrid characters. Places might combine features from multiple real locations. The result is a kind of psychological poetry where literal accuracy is sacrificed in favor of emotional or symbolic resonance. This blending may serve important functions, helping to integrate new experiences with existing knowledge, finding connections across disparate memories, processing emotions by linking current feelings to past experiences, and generally maintaining the flexibility and associative richness of memory networks. Through all of this nightly activity, through the replay of memories and the processing of emotions and the generation of novel scenarios, dreams serve to prepare the mind for waking life, helping to ensure that we wake each morning with brains that are ready to face new challenges, to learn new things, to regulate emotions appropriately, and to function at our best. The consolidation of memories during sleep means we wake with yesterday's experiences more firmly encoded, more integrated with existing knowledge, more available to guide today's behavior. The emotional processing during dreams means we wake with feelings that have been worked through and regulated, with anxieties potentially reduced, with emotional responses appropriately calibrated. The neural maintenance and synaptic regulation that occur during sleep mean we wake with brains that are not saturated and rigid but flexible and ready to learn. The rehearsal and simulation of scenarios during dreams may mean we wake better prepared to handle challenges, having mentally explored possibilities and practiced responses. In all these ways, sleep and dreaming serve a preparatory function, a kind of nightly maintenance and optimization routine that keeps our cognitive and emotional systems functioning well. We wake from sleep not merely rested but genuinely renewed, with brains that have been serviced and tuned overnight, prepared to engage with waking life with all our faculties at their best. Dreams also expose consciousness in its rawest form, stripped of the usual constraints and structures that shape waking awareness, showing us what consciousness is like when it is freed from the need to accurately represent external reality or to support adaptive behavior in the world. In dreams, we see consciousness uncoupled from perception, generating experiences without sensory input. We see it uncoupled from action, producing intentions and efforts that lead nowhere. We see it uncoupled from reality testing, accepting impossibilities without question. We see it uncoupled from executive control, wandering where it will without deliberate direction. What remains is the fundamental capacity for subjective experience itself, the ability to have sensations and feelings and thoughts, to experience something rather than nothing. This raw consciousness, this pure experience without the usual functional context, reveals what consciousness is at its core, separate from all the specific purposes it serves during waking. Philosophers and neuroscientists studying consciousness have long grappled with a hard problem: the question of why physical brain processes give rise to subjective experience at all, why there is something it is like to be us rather than our brains simply processing information unconsciously. Dreams bring this question into sharp focus because they show that consciousness persists even when its usual functional roles are suspended, suggesting that subjective experience is not just an incidental byproduct of information processing but something more fundamental, something that continues as long as certain patterns of brain activity are present regardless of whether those patterns are serving their usual adaptive functions. Every night, then, as we close our eyes and drift into sleep, the brain becomes its own storyteller, weaving narratives from the threads of memory and emotion, constructing characters and settings, creating conflicts and resolutions, all without conscious direction or deliberate intent. The stories emerge spontaneously from the autonomous activity of neural networks, from the patterns of activation that sweep through memory systems and emotional centers and sensory cortices during sleep. Sometimes the stories are simple and fragmentary, mere sketches or isolated scenes. Other times they are elaborate and extended, with complex plots and character development unfolding across what feels like hours of dream time. The stories reflect our concerns and preoccupations, our hopes and fears, our unresolved questions and unprocessed experiences. They speak in the language of imagery and metaphor rather than explicit prose, communicating through symbols and emotions rather than through logical argument. They are stories told to an audience of one, stories that often vanish upon waking and are never shared or remembered by anyone. Yet they are no less meaningful for being private and ephemeral. These nightly narratives serve purposes we are only beginning to understand, helping to integrate and make sense of our experiences, to process difficult emotions, to explore possibilities, to maintain the health and flexibility of the neural systems that support all of cognition and consciousness. The brain as storyteller is not engaged in idle entertainment but in essential work, using narrative as a tool for organizing and processing information, for finding meaning and patterns, for understanding ourselves and our world. At its deepest level, dreaming represents the mind exploring itself, turning inward to examine and work with its own contents, its memories and knowledge and feelings and concerns, in a way that is impossible during waking when attention must be directed outward toward the demands of environment and action. During dreams, the mind has the freedom to wander through its own internal spaces, to make connections between distant memories, to examine emotions from different angles, to consider possibilities and scenarios without practical constraints. This self-exploration may be one of the most fundamental functions of dreaming, a kind of internal reconnaissance mission where the mind surveys its own territory, checks on the state of its various systems, identifies areas that need attention or integration. The exploration is not guided by conscious intention but happens automatically, driven by the intrinsic dynamics of neural networks and by the concerns and needs that are most pressing at the moment. Through this nightly self-exploration, the mind maintains knowledge of itself, keeps itself organized and integrated, prevents the fragmentation that might result if different memories and feelings and concerns remained isolated from one another. Dreaming is the mind's way of staying in touch with itself, of maintaining the coherence and integration that allow us to function as unified beings rather than as collections of disconnected mental modules. And yet, despite all of this elaborate nightly activity, despite the hours we spend immersed in vivid dream worlds, navigating complex scenarios and experiencing intense emotions, every morning we wake carrying only fragments, small pieces of the vast dream experiences we had during the night, tiny remnants of what was a rich and extended alternate reality just moments before. The vast majority of our dream life is lost to us, evaporating as we wake, leaving behind perhaps a vague sense of having dreamed something, a mood or feeling whose source we cannot identify, or if we are fortunate, a few clear scenes or images that we can recall and describe, though they too will fade as the day progresses unless we make deliberate effort to preserve them. We live two lives, one in waking and one in dreaming, but we remember only one fully. The life we live in dreams is largely lost to us, existing only in the moments of dreaming themselves and then vanishing, contributing to who we are in ways we cannot fully access or understand. This forgetting might seem wasteful, all those experiences and stories and explorations disappearing without trace. But perhaps the forgetting is itself functional, serving to maintain clear boundaries between waking and dreaming, preventing confusion between what really happened and what we dreamed, allowing dream experiences to do their work of processing and consolidation without cluttering waking memory with internal simulations. We wake carrying fragments, but we also wake changed by dreams we do not remember, having been shaped in small ways by the nightly processing and exploration, emerging each morning slightly different than we were the night before, our memories a bit more consolidated, our emotions a bit more regulated, our neural networks a bit more flexible, all thanks to the work of dreaming that we will never fully recall. And so the cycle continues, night after night, year after year, lifetime after lifetime. The sleeping brain doing its essential work, the dreaming mind exploring itself, and each morning we wake carrying only fragments of what was a full and vivid alternate existence just moments before, ready to begin another day in the waking world, never fully knowing all that happened in the darkness while we slept.